Chapter 179. Don't look at it as a blade of grass. Damn, could it be one of those common grass? Someone recognized that it was actually the grass of immortality that had not appeared in the immortal world for tens of thousands of years. This grass of immortality could be said to be one of the miraculous spiritual essences of heaven and earth. Just by looking at the word immortality on it, one could guess how powerful it was. Legend had it that the grass of immortality had incredible power. If one swallowed the whole plant, one would probably die on the spot. However, if it was used to refine the mystical immortality pill and the longevity pill, it was simply a miraculous power that could steal the fortune of heaven and earth. Take the mystical immortality pill for example. As long as one was still breathing, no matter how injured one was, if one's nascent soul, primordial spirit, and body were to collapse, swallowing one would guarantee that one's primordial spirit would be as good as new. In an instant, one would be restored to peak condition and the body would be reformed. Even if one was in the hands of the Grim Reaper, it could be pulled back. It was a supreme life-saving immortal pill. Think about it, when fighting with other experts until both sides were injured, if one of them had an undying profound pill, he would recover after eating it. If the other didn't, wouldn't that be a complete tragedy? From this, one could see its value. As for the longevity pill, it was even more powerful. Legend had it that after taking the longevity pill, a small chi refinement cultivator would instantly soar at the speed of a flying sword for 10 to 100 years. In 100 years, one would definitely become an immortal. Ascension. One could imagine the preciousness of such a pill. Its value was enough to make countless immortal cultivators go crazy. Of course, the difficulty of refining these two pills was not mentioned here. The grass of immortality was only one of the main ingredients, but that did not affect its value. It could be said to be a priceless treasure. The situation after that could be imagined. Countless immortal cultivators flooded in, but those who could find the palace were few and far between. Those who could obtain treasures were even rarer. However, those who obtained them, without exception, seemed to be born with great luck. Every one of them had great achievements in the immortal cultivation world. Often, they would fly to the upper realm in a short period of time. Fortuitous encounters naturally meant danger. Countless cultivators had lost their lives within the palace. In the end, many people realized that if this continued, then no matter how many people died, it would be difficult to find the fortuitous encounter within the palace. After all, not everyone could have such luck. Therefore, the matter of the bone burial wasteland slowly cooled down. Although there were still people going in from time to try their luck, they were no longer as crazy and blind as before. There were also many corrupt cultivators who found that this place was the most suitable place for them to cultivate. Many corrupt cultivators immediately filled the place, making it even more dangerous. A large number of cultivators who entered were killed by the evil cultivators. Immediately, the boneyard wasteland became desolate once more. The number of people who entered was even fewer. After all, fortuitous encounters were important, but their own lives were more important. Tion quietly remembered all of this carefully in his mind. He could not help but exclaim inwardly, "The purple gold mainland is really full of mysteries. Who knows how many ancient secrets are buried in this vast and boundless continent?" Even a tombstone in the strange cemetery of the southern barbarian had a terrifying power that could shake the heavens and earth. Who knew when the strange ruins in the underground of the southern barbarian had been left behind? His heart was in turmoil. Although he had not truly set foot in the entire purple gold mainland, the various mysterious areas that he had discovered during this period of time gave him an indescribable feeling about the entire continent. He secretly guessed that he did not know how many secrets were buried in this continent. What kind of scenery was the purple gold mainland in the ancient times? How were these mysterious areas formed? As he thought about it, the entire purple-gold mainland seemed to be shrouded in a thick layer of fog in his heart. It made him unable to see through the mysteries hidden within. So the Boneyard Wasteland actually has such a history. Di Shirtian returned to his senses and looked at Shui Wuhan and Wu Wu. However, you suddenly mentioned this matter. Could it be that you intend to enter the Boneyard Wasteland? With his intelligence and wisdom, he guessed the purpose of Shui Wuhan and the others' words in the blink of an eye. If they did not intend to enter, there was absolutely no need to mention this matter at this time. Since they had mentioned it, there was an 80 to 90% chance that they wanted to enter. Sure enough, Wu Wudi said in a deep voice, "That's right. Although the Boneyard Wasteland is dangerous, it is the best place to gain experience. If there is an opportunity, I want to enter that mysterious palace. Anyway, I have long been curious about that place. This time, Brother Wuhan mentioned it to me, so I agreed." Yes, the Boneyard Wasteland has many natural treasures that cannot be found outside. Even if we cannot find the palace, there will be other opportunities. Therefore, I would like to invite Brother D to join us. The three of us will enter together to gain experience. Shui Wuhan looked at Di Shirtian with an expectant gaze. Obviously, she hoped that he would agree. One more person meant one more portion of strength. What's more, Sakra's powerful battle prowess was something they had witnessed with their own eyes in the Zither realm. Sakra muttered to himself and didn't say a word. His mind was spinning rapidly. Everyone had curiosity, and he was no exception. Naturally, he also wanted to experience it. Every experience could give him a huge accumulation, and when it accumulated to a certain extent, it would bring great benefits to a person. The importance of gaining experience was incomparably important. However, in the blink of an eye, he had already made up his mind. With a hesitant expression, he said, "I am naturally interested in exploring a place like the Bone-Burying Wasteland. However, I heard that the Sky Demon's secret plane will open in 3 years. Furthermore, during this period of time, I have already decided to learn the zither in the Zither Music Valley. I am afraid it will be very difficult to go with you." As he spoke, he subtly mentioned the Heavenly Demon's secret zone. Although he did not know much about it, he wanted to bring up this topic so that he could obtain some information. Hearing this, Shui Wuhan and Wu Wudi looked at each other and laughed. "Brother D, don't worry. I did not say that we have to go now. We do not intend to miss out on the Sky Demon's secret realm. In my opinion, the three of us are already at a peak. Therefore, we have decided that after the Sky Demon's secret realm is over, we will cultivate in seclusion for a period of time and strive to form our gold core. We will raise our cultivation to a considerable level before going to the Boneyard Wasteland." Hearing this, Di Shirtian also understood that they did not intend to go now. After all, the Boneyard Wasteland was full of danger. If they entered now, they might really become a pile of bones. Therefore, they had long planned to cultivate to the core formation stage before going together. That way, they would have a greater chance of success. Di Shirtian and the other two ate and chatted upstairs. They made a promise to meet again in 10 years and go to the Boneyard Wasteland together. They had made a promise of 10 years. As for whether it was intentional or not, they had some understanding of the Sky Demon's secret realm. At least, they knew where the secret realm would open. They also learned some common knowledge of the cultivation world. After all, Shui Wuhan and Wu Wudi already knew that Di Shirtian was a greenhorn. They consciously explained all kinds of common knowledge, some general situation in the cultivation world, various things to pay attention to, and so on. All of them benefited Di Shirtian greatly. In today's cultivation world, chi refining and foundation establishment cultivators were the most common. Core formation cultivators were already quite extraordinary and could take charge of their own affairs. Nascent soul cultivators were old monsters. It was not that there were no cultivators above the nascent soul stage, but most of the cultivators above that stage were keen on cultivating in seclusion. Unless there was something important or something that moved them, they rarely showed themselves. That was why the current situation in the cultivation world was roughly the same. They talked until late into the night. Chertion did not stay in the restaurant for long. Instead, he chose to leave and return to the Guqin Valley. After all, he did not know when the Qin family would begin to teach him the Guqin. After leaving the restaurant, he walked on the crisscrossed street. He naturally fell into deep thought, secretly thinking about the precious information he had obtained today. The Sky Demon's secret realm will open on North Night Island. However, I still don't know where North Night Island is. It seems that I have to find another opportunity to ask. Chertion muttered to himself. He knew the location of the Sky Demon's secret realm, but he knew too little about the purple gold mainland. He did not even have a rough map. However, since he knew the name, it would be much easier to find it. As long as he had the heart, it would not be difficult to find it. What he was thinking about was actually something related to the immortal cultivation world. In the current cultivation world, almost no cultivators above the nascent soul stage came out. This situation was very beneficial to the demon clan. If he took advantage of this period of time to develop vigorously, he might have the opportunity to accumulate some strength. In that case, even if the cultivation world found out that the demon clan's strength had increased greatly in the future, it would not be easy to do anything about it. Realizing that this period of time was a great opportunity to expand his strength, Chertion's heart began to burn with passion. He pondered as he walked. Slowly, he began to approach the city gate. At this moment, outside the imperial city, on the only path to the Guqin Valley, a black-clothed man blended into the darkness. His eyes were fixed on the city gate. In his hands were two blood-red long hooks. Although they were called hooks, they were actually somewhat similar to water-splitting thorns. The blades of the hooks shone with a cold light and faintly emitted a strong smell of blood. However, this smell of blood was not confined to the hooks and did not spread out. The blood-red light flickered in the darkness, appearing abnormally evil. This person stood in the darkness, like a poisonous snake hidden in the darkness. Usually, he lurked motionlessly and did not make a sound. However, at the critical moment, he could deliver a fatal blow and kill his target. This kind of person was quite terrifying. He could be said to be proficient in the way of the assassin and the art of forbearance. He was one of the most terrifying types of enemies. He's coming out. Following his gaze, a figure directly flew out from the city wall and landed on the ground. The figure was walking in his direction. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 180. The one who came down from the city wall was naturally Sakura, who was preparing to return to the Zither Sound Valley. A mere city wall couldn't even stop the martial arts experts of the Jianghu, let alone a demon like him. He easily left the imperial capital, looked at the direction slightly, and walked towards the road back. However, after taking a few steps forward, Chertion stopped in his tracks. His brows were tightly knitted, and his eyes narrowed, emitting rays of cold light as he scanned the surroundings. That black shadow had long been hiding behind a big tree. His whole body's aura was restrained, not revealing the slightest bit. He didn't even look at Sakura. He looked like a stone without any breath of life, which made people unable to detect him. Even when Sakura's demon awareness swept over him, he didn't find anything wrong. He only treated it as a stone that was passed over. How could this be? There is clearly no other danger nearby. Why do I suddenly feel uneasy? Chertion stopped in his tracks and his eyes flashed. Just now, when he was about to continue walking forward, he did not know why, but a strong sense of uneasiness suddenly emerged in his heart. He felt uneasy, and his mood became quite irritable for no reason. This was not the first time he had experienced this kind of whim. When he was in the southern wilderness, it was because of this feeling that he saved Little White at the most critical moment. Now, he inexplicably had this feeling again. Moreover, it was accompanied by a strong sense of danger, as if some great danger was approaching. This feeling made all the hair on his body stand up involuntarily. This was why he suddenly stopped and scanned the surroundings as quickly as possible. However, he did not find any danger. Could it be that some family member related to me is in danger? That's why there is such a premonition. This thought naturally surfaced in his mind after repeated probing and failing to find anything. After all, something like a sudden inspiration was, firstly, related to himself, and secondly, related to the people related to him. Now that he didn't seem to be in any danger, it meant that the people related to him might be in danger. Who could it be? Tirtian secretly guessed. However, after thinking about it, Mother Tiger and his brother were in the Thousand Beasts sect. Even if they were in danger, it was likely that distant water could not quench the immediate thirst. If it was the southern barbarians, then it was possible that Little White was in danger. And in the southern barbarians there was a strong person like Bai who looking after them. Logically speaking, there should not be any major problems. After pondering for a moment, he was unable to confirm his suspicions. He could only keep these thoughts in his heart. He stopped and continued to walk forward. However, as he walked, he kept an extra eye on his surroundings. His demonic sense constantly scanned his surroundings, vigilant of everything. Waves of energy naturally rose from his entire body. The muscles on his arms coiled up, and his meridians surged under his skin like dragons. He was secretly on guard. Pata! Pata! His footsteps were steady and rhythmic as he walked forward step by step. The time between each step was almost the same, and the distance he covered was also unusually similar. Something's wrong. There must be something wrong. The more Sakura walked forward, the more his heart was beating wildly. That kind of innate alertness towards danger that came from the King of Beasts was telling him that there was definitely a fatal danger in the vicinity. When he realized this, his footsteps that were originally moving forward suddenly turned back. His figure was like lightning as he madly charged towards the imperial capital from which he had come. Chi! Just as he turned around and was about to leave, a bloody light flashed in the darkness and stabbed towards Tirtian's back like lightning. This attack was really silent and unimaginably fast. Wherever it passed, there was not even a trace of fluctuation in the air. It was simply strange and extraordinary. If he was not careful, he would be stabbed by this bloody light on the spot. However, Tirtian, who was running forward at full speed, seemed to have a pair of eyes on his back. His body stopped at will, and the change between moving and static was so fast and sudden that it made people who saw it want to vomit blood. His feet stepped to the left and his body turned. The bloody light was originally aimed at his back, but with this turn, it became his left arm. Poof! It seemed that the body was not inferior to the martial cultivators, but under the bloody light, a deep wound was easily cut open. A stream of blood splashed out, but Tirtian did not hesitate at all because of this. Not knowing when, he was holding the Seven Sins demonic zither in his left hand, and his right hand touched it heavily. Ding-dong! A translucent crescent-shaped sound blade instantly slammed into the blood radiance. With a crisp ding sound, the bloody light was hit and trembled in midair. Its shape was revealed, but it was a blood-red hook. The blood hook flew backwards, and when it flew 5 feet away, a hand gently held it in its hand. In an instant, a figure that seemed to be covered in darkness appeared in front of Tirtian. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact, all of this happened in the blink of an eye. Good method, good magic weapon. I don't understand how you found me. That black figure was no one else but Wan Tao, who had been waiting here for Tirtian. Wan Tao looked at Tirtian, glanced at his injured arm, then fell on the Seven Sins demonic zither, and finally looked at his face. Only those who were in the middle of it could sense that De Chertien's move was not simple. When he suddenly fled back, Wan Tao subconsciously made a move and revealed his tracks. Moreover, when he was escaping, he seemed to be escaping with all his might, but at the crucial moment, he could stop as he wished and avoid as he wished. Just based on this point, it could be seen that Sakura had actually arranged so many contingency plans in such a short period of time. He was not escaping, but deliberately drawing out the hidden danger. Who are you? If I am not mistaken, I have never seen you before, and we have no enmity. Why did you suddenly ambush me here to kill me? De Chertien's heart trembled, and his eyes shone as he stared at Wan Tao. In a situation where his heart was constantly on guard, he did not hesitate to use the move, draw the snake out. As expected, he drew out the enemy that was hiding in the dark, and he couldn't detect it. He was actually unable to see through the cultivation of the person in front of him. If he was not mistaken, he was almost certainly a core formation cultivator. I am Wan Tao, a disciple of the Blood Cloud clan. You have no enmity with me? Wan Tao sneered. Could it be that you have forgotten about Xueini, whom you met during the Qin clan's groom search? Let me remind you, he is my junior apprentice brother. If I am not mistaken, my junior apprentice brother died at your hands. It was very strange. When he spoke of Xueini, not only did his words not contain the slightest hint of grief or indignation, they instead contained a sense of calmness. His two eyes seemed to be able to look straight into one's heart. Xueini? When De Chertien heard this, how could he not understand where this disaster had come from? However, it was naturally impossible for him to admit it at this time. He said indifferently, if you want to condemn someone, you can always find some excuse. You want to kill me, De Chertien? You are not qualified. Apart from myself, no one else can take my life. Kill. The light in De Chertien's eyes sharpened. With a thought, incomparably pitch-black crescent moon-shaped demon mist blades condensed around his body. There were over 20 of them. As soon as they appeared, they circled around his body and rapidly danced. As they danced in the air, they protected all of his vitals. Go! Sakura shouted, and 10 out of the 20 demon mist blades instantly split out and blasted towards Wan Tao without any restraint. This attack immediately covered his entire body from top to bottom under the attack of the blades. Faintly, it even sealed off the position where he could retreat and dodge. Each blade was as thin as a cicada's wing, and as fast as lightning. After passing by, one could clearly see that the air had been cut open. Chi-chi sounds continuously rang out. The demon mist blades continued to grow stronger as De Chertien grew stronger. Now, the blades could even cut open a mid-grade defensive Dharma artifact. This attack was like a thunderbolt. It whistled through the air, and a fierce, killing intent spilled out. Humph! Wan Tao's eyes only contained a trace of a cold smile. The blood hook in his left hand flew into the air. The hook trembled and mysteriously split into countless rays of blood light. They quickly intertwined in midair, forming a huge blood net. As if catching fish, the net flew towards the oncoming blades. Puff, puff, puff! If De Chertien's demon mist blades represented a powerful attack, then this blood net was like the most gentle water. When the blades cut into the blood net, the net naturally released a mysterious and gentle force. In an instant, this force was dispersed throughout the entire blood net. At the same time, traces of blood chi appeared and surged towards the blades. Under the influence of the blood chi, the blades mysteriously began to collapse. This blood chi actually contained a strong corrosive power. In the blink of an eye, the 10 blades were completely corroded. Moreover, the blood net did not dissipate. It immediately covered De Chertien. You want to kill me? Do you think the life of De Chertien will be so easy to take? De Chertien's body fiercely emitted an aura of supremacy. When this aura appeared, a tyrannical aura of supremacy naturally appeared in the world. The royal mark on his forehead wildly pulsated, as if it was about to completely combust. Roar! With a thought, waves of pure demonic chi gushed into his body like a surging river from the demon palace and quickly flowed into his throat. Using a special method, the demonic chi circulated in his throat. When the demonic chi had accumulated to a peak, the Indra's eyes shone with a substantial radiance. He suddenly opened his mouth and a tiger's roar surged out. Rumble! The tiger's roar was domineering and awe-inspiring. The aura of the king of beasts, the king of all beasts, was completely revealed in this roar. The ground beneath his feet seemed to turn over like an earth dragon, mysteriously forming a kind of wave shape and violently shaking. All the stones on the ground were shaken into fine powder on the spot. The surrounding trees all exploded one after another. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 181. Even the earth, under Sakra's tiger roar, became like the waves in the lake, undulating and shaking unceasingly. This roar simply ignored everything and passed into Wan Tao's ears on the spot. How could Wan Tao guard against this move? He only felt that in his mind, countless loud thunderous sounds suddenly resounded, shaking his mind until it went blank. 2 streaks of blood spurted out from his ears and his eyes were seeing stars. Moreover, the tiger's roar had only just unleashed its power. Waves of sound waves quickly spread out in all directions like a tide with him as the center. That was not all. The sound waves condensed again and turned into pitch-black sound blades. Wan Tao had turned the sound waves into blades and turned them into tens of thousands of blades, like a fairy scattering flowers. They rushed towards the huge blood net, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. The sound blades formed from the tiger roar may not be as powerful as the sound blades from the 7 sins demonic zither in terms of individual attacks, but in terms of numbers, they were very impressive. Furthermore, the sound blades were terrifyingly sharp. They materialized and landed on the blood web almost instantly. Although the blood web was very strong, it could not withstand the attack of thousands of sound blades at once. In the blink of an eye, it was cut into pieces. Condense! The blood net that was broken apart did not dissipate. Instead, it rapidly gathered together and once again transformed into a blood-colored long hook that flickered with blood-red light. However, the blood-red light on this long hook had already become somewhat dim. Evidently, it had suffered quite a bit of damage from the collision just now. Ding-dang! Just as Di Shirtian controlled the countless sound blades to attack Wan Tao's eyes finally regained their clarity. After all, he was a powerhouse in the core formation stage. Although he was injured by accident, causing his blood to boil and his true yuan to almost be unable to circulate, his core formation stage cultivation was cultivated by himself. He was not like Shweta, who took a shortcut. When he came back to his senses, he suddenly took out a small and delicate bell. There were mysterious talismans on the bell. He held it in his hand and shook it forcefully. The bell let out a clear and melodious sound, which actually woke him up from the shock of the tiger's roar. A kind of clarity shrouded the surroundings. The sound of the bell could actually block the tiger's roar outside. I didn't expect you to know such a powerful sound attack. Fortunately, I knew that I was coming to the Harp Melody Valley. In order to prevent any conflicts with the Qin clan, I intentionally brought along this god's summoning bell that I accidentally obtained. Otherwise, I would really fall into your trap. Today, I'll let you experience the power of my blood-soul hook. Wan Tao was filled with hatred as he glared at Di Shirtian. His eyes were terrifyingly cold as he formed a strange seal with his hands and struck the 2 blood hooks. Immediately, the blood hooks emitted a strong blood-red light and soared into the air. It was very strange as they did not attack the sound blades that were flying at high speed. Instead, they fiercely collided with each other in the air. In an instant, the two blood hooks turned into a cluster of dense blood fog. The sound of water splashing could be heard from within the blood fog. A blood-colored river surged out in a mysterious manner from the blood fog. Perhaps it was not appropriate to call it a river. It was more appropriate to call it a blood-colored stream. After this blood river was formed, it immediately swept towards the sound blades. This was the reversal of the blood river that Wan Tao had cultivated for several dozen years. This blood river was formed from the blood hook. This technique was called mist transformation among flying sword. It could be said to be a profound technique in controlling sword. His blood river was also a relatively powerful type of mist transformation. This blood river was not a simple blood river. The water inside was filled with a strong corrosive power. Even if a magic tool fell into the blood river, it would be easily corroded. It was quite terrifying. Now that he had swept the sound blades into the blood river, they only violently tumbled a few times before being swallowed whole. There was not the slightest movement. In a few breaths of time, all of the sound blades in the air were swallowed up by the blood river. A strong smell of blood spread out and filled the air. It corroded all of the surrounding vegetation and caused them to wither on the spot. There was a strong evil aura that seemed incomparably evil. Di Shirtian, don't think that I'm afraid of you just because you have a sound attack. You're just a mere foundation establishment cultivator. Let's see how you'll break through my blood river. Wan Tao's expression became incomparably evil. He pointed his finger, and the blood river that had swallowed the sound blades immediately roared and swooped down towards Di Shirtian. Everywhere it passed, the air would violently tremble. Wang. Under such circumstances, Sakura was still rather calm. He held the guqin with one hand while his other hand landed heavily on the 9 strings of the guqin. He forcefully pulled and released the strings. The strings vibrated and a sound wave spread out in all directions along with the vibrations of the strings. This sound wave was even more shocking than the tiger's roar. In the surrounding air, one could faintly see traces of distorted ripples. Within a radius of 10 meters, everything was shrouded in a sound wave domain, completely shrouding Sakura within, causing an additional layer of incomparably powerful protective shield to appear outside his body. Boom, boom, boom. The river of blood surged forward and slammed into the area filled with sound waves, creating a terrifying boom. The river of blood was formed by the 2 blood hooks. Wan Tao was a core formation cultivator, so these blood hooks were already considered magical treasures. Adding on his own cultivation base, the 2 blood hooks were already considered magical treasures. This collision was truly like the weight of Mount Tai. The frightening power actually caused the sound domain, which was filled with the power of sound waves, to tremble violently. The distorted space turned into a frightening scene that could be seen with the naked eye. Using sound waves to defend is indeed very unique. But you're just a foundation establishment cultivator. If you want to fight against a core formation cultivator, it's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Today, I'll let you know the true strength of a core formation cultivator. Wan Tao said mockingly. He didn't care about using other methods. There was only one way to control the blood river, and that was to ram. He wanted to use the blood river to ram Di Shirtian's defense. Fierce, really fierce. Although it was barbaric, it was undoubtedly a display of strength. I'm stronger than you, so I have the right to be fierce. Ram. The blood river swooped down again and again in the air, crashing madly towards Di Shirtian. Every time it crashed, the sound wave domain trembled violently. Di Shirtian's right hand, which was on the zither strings, was hit by the terrifying recoil. Wounds appeared on his hand, and blood dripped onto the zither. It was abnormally beautiful. The 7 Sins demonic zither was strong and was comparable to a magic treasure. But Di Shirtian's current state meant that he couldn't unleash the full power of the zither. Just by playing the zither, he could only unleash half of its power. Bang! Di Shirtian was shocked. Although he had fought core formation cultivators face to face before, back in the Southern Barbarian, it took several monster beast kings working together to kill a late core formation cultivator. In the Zither realm, he killed Shweta. Although Shweta was known as a core formation cultivator, he didn't have the true strength of a core formation cultivator. Not to mention, Shirtion back then was an existence that surpassed common sense. Now, he was facing a core formation cultivator alone. Only now did he truly understand the terror of a core formation cultivator. It was indeed very strong. While his eyes were filled with shock, the sound wave domain was crushed 9 times in a row. A blood river emitted a strong and mysterious aura, and like a terrifying beast, it rolled towards Shirtion. An aura of death suddenly enveloped his body. No, I won't die, and I can't die. Looking at the blood river in front of him, he had already seen the terror of the blood river. How could he not know that if he was swept up by it, even with his monster beast body, it would be difficult to resist? He would be completely swallowed by the blood river, and not even his bones would be left. It was simply terrifying. At this moment of life and death, a strong obsession flashed through his mind. He didn't want to die, and he couldn't die. Everything that had happened in his previous life flashed through his mind in a flash. A strong desire to live, a desire to control his own life, and not the heavens, grew wildly in his body. He looked up to the sky and roared, "Other than myself, no one has the right to take away my life. My life belongs to me, not the heavens. In the heavens and on the earth, only I am worthy." Ah! The roar soared into the sky, straight into the clouds. In an instant it frantically spread out in all directions. Not to mention the entire imperial capital, even the Zither Music Valley could clearly hear this earth-shattering roar. This was a hysterical roar. The roar was filled with a terrifying aura of supremacy. And just as this roar was filled with that unique aura of supremacy that erupted from his body, a change that he had never expected finally happened. The purple king mark on his forehead emitted a myriad of purple light. In the light, the king mark seemed to have completely turned into a violent purple flame. This purple flame was wildly pulsating, filled with endless majesty, and enveloped Shirtion. On the spot, his body seemed to have become incomparably tall in an instant. It was as if, in this world, he was the only one, and everyone had to submit at his feet. No power was allowed to provoke him. Those who provoked him would definitely be destroyed. The supreme majesty seemed to be able to topple mountains and overturn seas, surging out. In an instant, all the creatures in the surroundings were suppressed by this majesty to the point that they couldn't even breathe, as if they were going to be completely suffocated. At this moment, even Wan Tao had the illusion that his breathing was not smooth. How can this be? Shirtion is clearly a foundation establishment cultivator. How can he emit such an aura? This is impossible. How is that possible? Wan Tao found it hard to accept the change in front of him. He couldn't imagine that a person who was clearly weaker than him could emit a terrifying aura that even he couldn't resist. Terrifying, mysterious, and terrifying. Blood River, devour him! Wan Tao's eyes flashed with a trace of madness. He had a premonition that something terrifying was about to happen. Without even thinking, he directed the blood river to swallow Shirtion whole. Boom, boom, boom! Sakra stood at his original spot, but he was like a Buddha, looking down on the world. The king mark on his forehead emitted thousands of purple rays that seemed to have substance. The king mark was constantly pulsating, its speed getting faster and faster. I would like to ask everyone for a few tickets. While reading, I hope you can casually throw a few tickets. Show your support. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 182. Whoosh! Thousands of rays of purple light shot out from the purple king mark. The purple light filled the entire space in front of him. At the same time, a change that surprised even Chertion himself happened, because at this moment, he could clearly feel that there was an unprecedented change in the purple pool in the king mark on his forehead. He quickly immersed his consciousness into the king mark. He carefully swept his gaze over it, and his heart was filled with surprise and anticipation. He saw that in the large purple pool, there were many figures wrapped in purple light. These figures were all souls that he had absorbed. Among these souls, most were human souls. Of course, there was no lack of animal souls, but there were very few of them. In total, there were about 1,000 or 2,000 souls. When these souls entered the purple pool, it was as if they were controlled by a mysterious power. Each and every one of them continuously absorbed the mysterious power of the purple pool. Their bodies were covered with a layer of purple light. This purple light entered the souls bit by bit, causing the color of the souls to gradually turn purple. This process seemed to be very long. Only 2 of the souls completely turned purple. The rest were only partially purple. As time passed, it could be foreseen that in the future, their entire bodies would be completely purple. Furthermore, on the surface of their bodies, the purple light also mysteriously formed battle armors. These battle armors were quite illusory, and looked like illusions. It was very strange. In their hands they all held very different weapons. There were blades, spears, and all kinds of weapons. They could all be seen clearly. Overall, they looked very valiant. At this time, the originally calm purple pool began to violently churn. All of the souls in the purple pool opened their eyes at the same time. In their eyes, a bright purple light shot out and revealed a cold expression. A strange passage appeared in the sky above the purple pool. Roar! All of the souls let out roars. The 2 souls that had completely turned purple were the first to start. Their bodies rushed out of the purple pool and into the purple passage. The rest followed one after another. Die, you can't escape from my blood river. Even a late core formation stage expert would have to avoid my blood river. No matter how strong you are, you won't be strong enough to have the strength of a nascent soul stage expert. Feeling the supreme pressure that was being emitted from Sakra's body, Wan Tao was struggling to hold on. He also desperately urged the blood river to roll towards him. As long as he was swept into the blood sea, all of this would be over. However, when the blood river was less than a meter away from Chertion, an unforeseen event finally happened. In the purple light that shot out from Chertion's forehead, 2 burly purple figures wearing strange illusory battle armor appeared. One held a blade and the other a battle sword. They mysteriously gathered in front of them. The eyes of the fighting soul holding the saber were cold. A purple light shot out from his eyes as he looked at the blood-red river that was rushing towards him. He suddenly raised the saber in his hand, and hacked down at the blood river without any trace of politeness. A 10-feet-long saber light burst out from the saber, and heavily chopped at the blood river. Bang! The power of this slash was in no way inferior to the full-powered attack of a late Foundation establishment expert. Furthermore, the attack from the battle blade was rather condensed. It actually caused the river of blood to tremble violently. Waves of blood surged and roared continuously, as if it was about to be destroyed. The other battle soul raised the battle sword in his hand high up and also slashed at the river of blood. This attack was like the straw that broke the camel's back. It cut the blood river into 2 halves. The war soul's attack was terrifying. Good, good, good. So this was the true power of my innate divine ability. Helping the tiger do evil, the Chi ghosts turned into battle souls, and the battle souls were under my control. With hundreds and thousands of battle souls surging forward, I was invincible. Who can stop me? Sakra couldn't help but be ecstatic in his heart. Finally, at this critical juncture, his own innate divine ability finally showed some movement and displayed a small portion of its power. However, He also felt that this was not the full power of his divine gift. What is this? Are they puppets? Wan Tao was taken aback by the sudden appearance of the fighting souls. The two fighting souls had defeated the Blood River with just one attack. Their casual attack was comparable to that of a Foundation Establishment Realm late-stage cultivator. Di Tian, do you think that these two puppets, which are equivalent to late Foundation Establishment stage experts, can stop me? My Blood River is not something that you can easily destroy. Today I will take your life. Condense. Wan Tao pretended to be disdainful. He formed a seal with his hands. Suddenly, the Blood River, which had been cut in two, mysteriously gathered together again. It roared and rushed towards Di Tian. Kill! At this time, Di Tian did not speak any nonsense and ordered the battle souls. Suddenly, the two battle souls immediately waved the battle blades in their hands. One rushed towards Shui He and the other waved the battle blade and chopped down towards Wan Tao. The blade light was like a piece of cloth and was incomparably vast. As the swords slashed down, a fierce murderous aura swept out. As a core formation expert, Wan Tao had quite a few magic tools and treasures in his possession. A pair of blood hooks transformed into a river of blood and a blood banner appeared in his hand. Clouds of blood billowed out of the banner, condensing into hundreds of swords and sabers that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. This was a blood cloud banner. It seemed to be even more powerful than the one in Shui Ini's hands. In one move, the war souls were entangled in countless attacks. You are just two Foundation Establishment stage experts. Today, I will tell you that the gap between our realms is not something that can be made up with numbers. I am in the core formation stage, and you are in the Foundation Establishment stage. Therefore, you should obediently accept your death. Wan Tao said coldly. To be honest, he was a little surprised by the current situation. At first, he thought that it would be a piece of cake for him to capture a mere Foundation Establishment cultivator with his own abilities. Who would have thought that such a turn of events would occur? Is that so? Di Tian's face revealed the same mocking expression as he asked in return. F***CK. Even though Wan Tao was a core formation stage cultivator, he could not help but curse when he saw the changes in front of him. His eyes widened so much that they almost popped out of their sockets. As the royal mark on Di Tian's forehead continued to emit purple light, the war souls flickered with purple light and quickly condensed into bodies. 1, 2. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of war souls appeared around Di Tian. These war souls all had the same aura. Furthermore, their numbers continued to increase. With every breath, there would be hundreds more. All of them stared coldly at Wan Tao. Where did this evildoer come from? Do you want me to live? Wan Tao cursed loudly. With a wave of his hand, the blood river turned into two blood hooks and returned to his hand. He held the blood cloud banner in one hand and stepped on the blood hooks under his feet. He left behind a trail of resplendent blood light in the air. Without any hesitation, he turned around and quickly fled into the distance. As he fled, he cursed in his heart. Where did this evildoer come from? He was not afraid of one or two war souls. However, if there were hundreds or thousands of them, even a nascent soul stage cultivator would have to flee, let alone him. His heart was filled with boundless fear in an instant. Thinking of the hordes of war souls, Wan Tao's heart beat wildly. The blood light under his feet flew even faster. He desperately fled from this place. Unexpectedly, Di Tian did not let these war souls chase after him. Instead, he let out a sigh of relief. With a thought, all the war souls turned into rays of purple light at the same time. Like rivers flowing into the sea, they quickly rushed into the king pattern. In the purple pool, they turned back into war souls and continued to absorb the power of the purple pool. Di Tian did not stay for a moment. His feet were like the wind and he quickly rushed toward the location of the Guqin Valley. He swept out at the fastest speed in his life. Not long after he left, two figures appeared in the sky above the place where the battle had just taken place. One was dressed in white and the other was bold and unparalleled. Shui Wuhan gently stroked his folding fan and said, "Just now, there were people fighting here. Furthermore, one of them was definitely Sakura." His tiger's roar sound attack was heard by all of us in the Zither domain. Well, it seems that someone fought with Brother D here. However, it seems that there were no casualties. The remnant aura here is very strong. Wu Wudi quickly scanned the surroundings and said in a low voice. The two of them had rushed over after hearing Di Shirtian's powerful tiger roar. They did not expect that they would not be able to make it to the final battle. When they arrived, they could only see the empty battlefield. Let's go. I believe that Brother D should be fine. Tomorrow, I will send Xiao Lan to the Guqin Valley to take a look. Shui Wuhan nodded. This battle could be said to have caused a great commotion. That tiger roar was even more shocking. It was likely that it had alarmed many cultivators. There would definitely be more people coming later. Not wanting to stay any longer, they turned and flew back to the imperial capital. Sure enough, after they left, several groups of people rushed over from other places. When they saw the surrounding scene, they could only secretly guess who had fought here. The destruction caused was truly terrifying. Whoosh! In less than a quarter of an hour, Di Shirtian returned to the bamboo house in the purple bamboo forest. He sat on the bed and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. That was close. This time, I almost died in the hands of the Blood Cloud clan. Fortunately, my innate ability was able to unleash its might at this critical juncture, and even managed to scare that core formation cultivator into submission. Otherwise, I would have really fallen here. Although he had returned to the Guqin Valley, there was still a lingering sense of fear in his heart. Being able to escape danger this time was really a stroke of luck. However, it was luck, it was luck. Wan Tao was indeed the most powerful enemy he had faced alone. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 183. It had to be said that there was a great deal of luck involved in his escape this time. This time, the display of his innate divine ability had indeed turned the tide of the battle. However, to be honest, there were only two fighting souls that had strong combat abilities, and they were the two fighting souls that had turned completely purple. They had powerful combat abilities that were comparable to that of a late Foundation establishment stage cultivator. However, other than them, the other fighting souls all looked like gold and jade, but they had no strength. They could only be used as decorations. They had no battle capabilities at all. Don't look at the number of battle souls. If Wan Tao really tried to attack them, he would discover that the ones that appeared later were all good-looking but useless. Therefore, he was able to escape unscathed this time because of the element of luck. Shueini Blood Cloud Clan. It seems that this Blood Cloud Clan should be a rather large clan. They could even send core formation cultivators to kill me. If it were the experts above, they would be nascent soul old monsters. Di Shirtian calmed his mind and immediately began to ponder. He analyzed the incident in detail. According to his analysis, it seemed that the people of the Blood Cloud clan did not dare to brazenly enter the Zither Melody Valley to cause trouble. Otherwise, they would not have dared to take action when he left the Zither Melody Valley. This meant that the Zither clan was definitely not as simple as it appeared on the surface. He was afraid that what he had seen all along was only the surface. The power that was truly hidden was definitely quite shocking. It seems that as long as I don't leave the valley, no matter how strong the Blood Cloud clan is, they would not dare to charge into the valley. Just as well. During this time, I can also calm down and focus on learning the Zither. After I finish learning the Zither, I will be able to unleash the full power of the Seven Sins demonic Zither. Even if it's a core formation cultivator, I will still dare to fight. At least, I won't be in such a sorry state like today. He secretly made up his mind to never leave the valley before he finished learning the zither. In any case, he came here to learn the zither anyway. If he stayed here, he could learn the zither and cultivate at the same time. At the same time, he could think of a way to resolve the hidden danger in his body. The hidden danger caused by the sorrow meridian was only temporarily suppressed. It had not been completely eliminated. He also needed to think of a way to resolve it in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, it would be a huge problem in the end, and it would most likely affect the subsequent meridian sculpting. Therefore, no matter what, resolving the hidden danger was an urgent matter that could not be ignored. All kinds of problems were piling up on him, and he didn't have the time to sort them out. During this period of time, he did not plan to go anywhere. He planned to stay in the valley and focus on solving all the problems in his body. At that time, perhaps his overall strength would be greatly improved. Tion sat cross-legged on the bed after contemplating for a while and making some plans for the future. Closing his eyes, his consciousness quickly entered the purple king mark on his forehead. This time, the eruption of the royal mark had caused people to feel a great deal of interest in their innate divine abilities. They were able to see the power of their divine abilities even more clearly. Right now, there were only 2 war souls, and they were not inferior to any foundation establishment cultivator. They were almost as strong as core formation cultivators. When the other war souls all turned purple, wouldn't that mean that as long as he willed it, he could summon thousands of powerful war souls to charge and break through enemy lines for him? When facing an enemy, he could simply gang up on them. Thinking about it, if a person who was on par with him suddenly released thousands of terrifying war souls, how shocking would that scene be? Perhaps those with a slightly weaker mentality would collapse on the spot. One person could resist an army of thousands of men and horses. This innate divine ability was completely a great weapon that could turn the situation around. The strength of this ability almost made Tion want to completely master it. He quickly immersed himself in the royal mark. Inside the royal mark, a green zither was emitting traces of green light. The thousands of war souls were still lifelessly staying in the purple pool. Tion tried to use his consciousness to control the war souls. However, to his disappointment, for some reason, it seemed that the crisis had been resolved. These war souls were just like before, unable to be controlled at all. Each and every one of them just stayed in the purple pool, absorbing the mysterious power of the purple pool. It was almost exactly the same as before. There was no longer the strong sense of control from before. As expected, there are no shortcuts in this world. Previously, I was able to use the power of the royal mark because I suddenly activated the power of the royal mark at the critical moment of life and death. However, when will I be able to truly grasp the full power of the king rune? Sakura couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment in his heart. After all, to be unable to truly grasp such a powerful ability was an indescribable torment to anyone. Bitterness was unavoidable. However, he also guessed that with his current strength, he simply couldn't open it. Forget it. If I really encounter danger, the royal mark will definitely be activated. Even if it can't be used as my strongest ability, it can still be used as a trump card to turn the tables in a life and death situation. He thought to himself and tried many methods, but to no avail. He could only put it aside for the time being and silently began to channel the demonic chi. He drew the demonic chi out of the demonic mansion and circulated it around his body, using the demonic chi to nourish his physical body. As he circulated his demon yuan, another strange thing happened to him. He discovered that after forming the grief meridian, when he circulated his cultivation method to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and moon, the grief meridian that was filled with the 7 emotions and 6 desires was absorbed into his body. It circulated through the grief meridian and turned into a strange gray grief meridian. This power was different from the demonic origin energy. It was a new kind of power. The power of sorrow flowed through the meridians into the demon palace and into the demon refining furnace. It didn't fuse with the demonic origin energy. Instead, it mysteriously formed a gray gas above the demonic origin energy. This was the aura of sorrow that contained the power of sorrow. After careful inspection, another thing that made Di Shurtian smile bitterly appeared before his eyes. This grief meridian seemed to be able to be absorbed into his body, but strangely, he couldn't control it at all. When the grief meridian entered the demon refining cauldron, it did its own thing and didn't move, as if it was only going in and not coming out. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Now, even Di Shurtian himself was a little confused. Was it right or wrong to form the grief meridian? Before forming it, he wanted to use it to absorb the desire meridian. Yes, he had reached the point where he could absorb the desire meridian, but the key was that he could only absorb it and not use it. If he couldn't use it now, then so be it. Di Shurtian could only hope that he could find a way to solve it in the future. Slowly, his mind calmed down, and he gradually immersed himself in cultivation. As he inhaled and exhaled, it became quite rhythmic, with a strange rhythm. At this time, it was night. Although the sky was covered by dark clouds, the moonlight was only covered. The essence of the moonlight was still sprinkled on everything in the world as usual. Spots of silver-white light, like fireflies, gathered around Di Shurtian from all directions. At the same time, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the desire meridian, 3 kinds of power, poured into his body through the pores and meridians of his body. As the cultivation method operated in his body, it was refined. The scene of absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon naturally couldn't escape the attention of the Qin family. It should be known that ordinary immortal cultivators absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, which contained the power of the 5 elements. After all, the spiritual roots in the human body were mostly of the 5 elements. It wasn't that the essence of the sun and the moon couldn't be absorbed, but such cultivation methods were not only rare, but each one was a supreme treasure. Moreover, the conditions required to cultivate it were even harsher. Now, the essence of the sun and the moon was gathering in Di Shurtian's bamboo house. How could it not attract the attention of the Qin family? As I expected, Di Shurtian is definitely not an ordinary person. I remember that only the zombie record of the corpse refining sect and the Jade Girl Heart Sutra of the Xian Nyu sect, which is composed of women, can absorb the essence of the moon. There are many others, but each of such cultivation methods is extremely precious, and is a treasure of the sect. I don't know which one he has learned. Qin Xian thought to himself. Di Shurtian, what kind of person are you? Why do I have a feeling of wanting to get close to you when I see you? This is something I have never felt before. In a pavilion, Katomi also looked in the direction of Di Shurtian's residence, muttering to herself. She looked a little lost in thought. She was a little absent-minded. Indeed, there seemed to be quite a number of people who could not sleep tonight. Even Wan Tao, after escaping back to the small valley, had a gloomy face. His eyes were filled with bewilderment, and he was secretly worried. The scene of Sakura summoning hundreds and thousands of fighting souls had really frightened him, and he was so frightened that he could not think clearly. Thinking about it now, he had an impulse to run away. He had been cursing in his heart. How could there be such a monster in this world? A person who was obviously in the foundation stage could summon so many strange things. He was simply a monster. No matter how much he thought about it, time would never stop for anyone. It was always moving forward. A night, for immortal cultivators, couldn't be any shorter. It would pass by in a few minutes. In the blink of an eye, the dark clouds in the sky dissipated. In the early morning, golden rays of sunlight sprinkled down and fell on everything in the world, looking very sacred. A wisp of purple chi came from the east. Big Brother D, are you inside? Katomi has come to teach you the zither. Just as the sun rose, a clear and melodious voice sounded outside the bamboo house. It gave people a very comfortable feeling when it reached their ears. Phew! D. Shirtian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and quickly transferred the demon chi in his body into the demon mansion. He opened his eyes, and a faint light flashed in his eyes. However, it disappeared in the blink of an eye. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 184. After a night of quiet cultivation, his previous injuries had been completely healed by his powerful demonic body. His demonic essence, chi, and spirit had all been restored to their peak state. He got off the bed, tidied up his appearance, and walked towards the door at a leisurely pace. However, he was secretly surprised. He didn't expect that the person sent by the Chin clan to teach him would be Katomi. Creak! The tightly shut bamboo door opened with a soft sound. Sakura walked out of the bamboo house and looked outside. A beautiful figure was standing in the bamboo forest. She was wearing a plain white female dress which was especially matching. The elegant temperament on her body was as if it was made by heaven. There was a layer of white veil covering her face, making it impossible to see her face. However, from other parts of her body, it could be seen that her appearance was definitely not ordinary. So it was Miss Katomi. I didn't expect that you would be the one to teach me the zither. If there is any neglect, please don't blame me. D. Shirtian looked at Katomi with clear eyes. He wasn't like ordinary cultivators who would flatter and fawn over her. He didn't ask for help. He learned the zither using treasures in exchange for opportunities. They were only trading and didn't ask for anything. They didn't owe each other anything. Even when facing Katomi, he didn't feel any psychological burden. In terms of beauty, by who in the Myriad Demon Valley was a cut above her. Therefore, he was able to treat her with a kind of calmness that ordinary people didn't have. This kind of special treatment caused Katomi's eyes to flash with a strange light. She softly said, "The morning of the day is the most peaceful. Everything is awakened and the sun has just risen. It is the best time to learn the zither. My Chin clan received your gift, so we naturally have to be responsible for teaching you. In this generation of the Chin clan, Katomi just so happens to be learning the zither. Therefore, I volunteered to teach Brother D the zither. You don't tell me you don't welcome me?" Her eyes blinked as if they could speak. "Of course not. It is my blessing that Miss Chin can teach me in person. There is no reason for me not to welcome you." D. Shirtian nodded. A light flashed in his hand, and a dark purple 7-stringed zither appeared. This zither was obtained in the zither realm. Although it was still a prototype, it was definitely not a problem to play it. The 7 Sins demonic zither was his life-bound instrument. It was of the highest grade, comparable to a magic treasure. As the saying goes, one shouldn't show one's wealth. If he took it out, it was hard to guarantee that no one wouldn't discover its peculiarity. Therefore, D. Shirtian didn't take out the 7 Sins demonic zither, but an ordinary zither. Chinshin glanced at the guqin he took out and smiled. She nodded and said, "If that's the case, we don't need to be so polite. We still need to spend a lot of time together in the future. It's too cold to call you like this. In the future, I will call you Big Brother D and you can call me Little Sister Chinshin." Alright. There was no need to pay too much attention to these small details. D. Shirtian already knew that if he wanted to learn the zither, he naturally couldn't do it in the house. Therefore, a small bamboo pavilion was built in front of the bamboo building. It was just the right place to teach the zither. The two entered the pavilion and sat down. Katomi's zither was also placed on the table. It was a 7-stringed zither made of sycamore wood. Looking at its quality, it was also a supreme-grade instrument. It was extraordinary. Katomi took out the zither. It seemed that she didn't intend to teach the zither at the beginning. Instead, she opened her beautiful eyes and fell on Di Shirtian. Her red lips slightly opened, and she said, "The zither is a musical instrument. There are many kinds of musical instruments, such as flutes, pipa, eru, and so on. Only the zither is the most well-known in the world. In the ancient books there are words zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, and painting. The zither is ranked at the top and is regarded as the most cultivated of the 6 arts." Katomi saw that Big Brother D was actually willing to give up 10 embryos that could be said to be rare treasures in the cultivation world just to learn the zither in the secular world. I'm quite curious, so I dare to ask Big Brother D a question. In Big Brother D's heart, what is the zither? After saying that, a pair of clear eyes quietly looked at Di Shirtian. Speaking of the zither, in his previous life, it could be said that it was the most precious treasure of China since ancient times. In ancient history, the zither had never disappeared. It was almost a button that ran through countless thoughts. Di Shirtian's eyes flashed with an inexplicable look. There was a faint trace of nostalgia, but also seemed to have fallen into a kind of reverie. After a long time, he met Katomi's gaze without dodging and said in a deep voice, "The zither is the heart of the heart." Di Shirtian had once read a record in his previous life, which left a deep impression on him. The evaluation of the zither was extremely high. It said, "The zither has witnessed the rise and fall of the Chinese nation. It reflects the serene and quiet, free and easy thoughts of the descendants of China. The ideals of Ancestor Good were often expressed through the zither. Fuxi Shennong, the Yellow Emperor Yu Shun, and the others all had legends of creating zither. Moreover, it was very widespread in the zither world. Confucius, Zhuangzi, and the others were also zither masters. The ideal realm in their minds was vividly expressed in the ancient zither culture. During the Spring and Autumn Warring States period, it could be said that there were 100 schools of thought contending. It was the most intense era of all kinds of thoughts in China. The main activities on the ideological stage were Taoism, Confucianism, Moism, legalism, school of thought, 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 and school of thought. There were differences between each family's doctrines, but the thoughts of the 9 great clans had always coexisted in the minds of China's people, becoming a major feature of China's culture. This was because the people of China knew the commonality of all kinds of thoughts, free and easy, and the world was peaceful. The expression of one's inner voice was the strength of the zither. Even though the various clans all had different ideas, they all had a special fondness for the zither. The zither was the embodiment of the essence of the various schools of thought. It was the sound of tranquility, serenity, and carefreeness from the depths of the human heart. That was why people said that the guqin was the representative of Huaxia culture. The sound of the guqin was the inner voice. Even though Di Shirtian had not experienced such an era, he could imagine the supreme realm of the guqin. The guqin could be said to be the first musical instrument in the world. That was why when he saw the divine song in the ancient scroll, he did not hesitate to shape his natal demon artifact into a guqin. The guqin was the inner voice, and his heart was the sound of the guqin. Big Brother D is indeed a person who loves the guqin. The sound of the guqin is the inner voice. Well said. Katomi's eyes lit up. The purple-gold continent was not the same as China. However, the guqin was the first musical instrument, and it was the first musical instrument that appeared. Di Shirtian's words had undoubtedly revealed the true meaning of the guqin. I'm just a person who doesn't know anything about music. What I said was just some superficial understanding. Di Shirtian's expression was indifferent. He had no intention of claiming credit. One morning, Qinshin didn't immediately teach the guqin. She only talked about the history of the guqin, its illusion, and some music theory matters. After all, Di Shitian was only a beginner. It could be said that he didn't know anything. Everything needed to be learned from the beginning. Learning the temperament, learning how to read the guqin score, reading the music score, what each string on the guqin represented, whether the sound produced was high or low, and what the rhythm was, and so on. What she taught was only the theory. She did not say anything about the technique. It was not that she did not want to teach him, but that he had to follow the order step by step. Little by little, he understood the essentials. It was like a child learning how to walk. Learning music theory and the basics first was like walking step by step. If he suddenly learned the technique, it was undoubtedly like learning how to run without even knowing how to walk. It would be strange if he did not fall. What was even more frightening was that he would not even be able to distinguish what was being said. With Di Shitian's willpower, he naturally understood this principle. Therefore, he was not in a hurry at all. Anyway, he had plenty of time in the valley. His plan was to use 1 to 2 years to learn the guqin. Therefore, there was no need to worry about time at all. With his brain, he could naturally clearly understand and absorb these basics. Turn them into his own things. He really knew how to, he really understood. One taught seriously, the other learned seriously. Time passed quietly without them noticing. Katomi only taught for 2 to 4 hours in the morning every day. The rest of the time, she let Di Shitian do other things by himself. In any case, Di Shitian had finally taken the first step on the path of learning the guqin. In a mansion in the imperial capital, Hua Wenwu was staying in the study with a girl. Hua Wenwu's face was full of excitement. He seemed to be unable to control himself and kept pacing back and forth in the study. He couldn't help but exclaim, "That's great. Mr. D is indeed Mr. D." He just agreed to help during the day, and at night, he destroyed the Hall of Consecrators with his own hands. The 6 consecrators all died without a trace. "Hua Qing, oh Hua Qing, my good brother. The Hall of Offerings is gone. I'll see what tricks you can play. If you want to fight for the throne, I'll break your claws." His eyes were shining. He seemed to be unable to suppress his excitement. On his face, there was a kind of high-spirited momentum. There was a faint sense of sharpness. The news of the destruction of the Hall of Offerings in the imperial capital had already reached his ears early in the morning. At that time, the first thought that came to his mind was that Mr. D had done it. He had a more straightforward understanding of Di Shitian's strength in his heart. Thinking of the devil-like figure, he had a kind of awe. As for Di Shitian's request for a totem, he did not dare to have the slightest objection. He only thought that as soon as he ascended the throne, he would do a good job and firmly hold on to Mr. D's thigh. "Wenwu, exactly where did you find this Mr. D? The consecration hall is actually so weak in his hand." The girl was full of surprise. After knowing that it was her brother who hired someone to do it, she had not stopped being surprised in her heart. In the past, she had heard from Hua Wenwu that there was a way to deal with the Hall of Offerings, but she did not expect that this method would be so direct and so domineering. Vaguely, she was curious about Mr. D, who was standing behind her brother. "Royal sister, it's not convenient for me to say more about Mr. D. You only need to know that he is an extraordinary person. You must not offend him." Hua Wenwu took a deep breath, and his face became calm. He said, "Father's health has been getting worse recently. I've asked the imperial physician. I'm afraid that he can't hold on for more than a few months. My good brother, without the Hall of Offerings, has no capital to compete with me. If nothing unexpected happens, the throne will be mine. However, to prevent any movements from the other 2 countries when father dies, I'll have to ask you to mobilize your Sky Phoenix army to the border. Just in case. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 185. Don't worry, Wenwu. I've already thought of this. The Sky Phoenix army is probably at the border now. If anyone wants to take advantage of us, I don't mind killing them. The girl raised her eyebrows, revealing a heroic spirit and a murderous aura. It was obvious that she was not a flower that grew up in a greenhouse. With Royal Sister by my side, I'm relieved, Hua Wenwu said happily. He looked at the void, his eyes full of determination. He clenched his fist. Everything was for the sake of ascending to the throne. He had an ambition in his heart. If he could get Mr. D's support, perhaps he could become the first emperor to unite the 3 countries in the Eastern land. What kind of glory would that be? What kind of great achievement would it be? It would be recorded in the annals of history. As for all this, he only had to pay the price of a totem. No matter how he looked at it, this price was worth it. If he knew that Hua Wenwu had such an ambition, Di Shitian would not have stopped him. Instead, he would have helped him without hesitation. As long as China's territory was bigger and there were more people, he would get more power of faith. Why not? It seemed that Di Shitian's totem plan was about to succeed. Now, outside the Guqin Valley, Wan Tao, who had been thinking for a long time, felt that there was something wrong with the attack that night. It seemed that he had overlooked something. However, when he thought about it carefully, he could not figure out what was wrong. This made him feel anxious and doubtful. Hey, I remember now. The puppets that Sakura released before and after seemed to be somewhat different. One was completely purple, and the other wasn't completely purple. Could it be that there's something different inside? Could it be that the later ones didn't have the same strength as the 2 at the beginning? A thought flashed through Wan Tao's mind. It seemed that the fighting souls that appeared later were very different from the ones that had appeared earlier. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. However, when he thought about the thousands of fighting souls that were densely packed together, he could not help but feel extremely fearful. That situation was truly too terrifying. Now, the best way to verify his thoughts was to find Di Shitian and fight him again. However, when he thought of the situation, he felt a little hesitant. That night had left a deep impression on him. Just thinking about it made his hair stand on end. His expression kept changing, and the light in his eyes flickered. After pondering for a long time, he finally said to himself, "Forget it. Anyway, Di Shitian is already hiding in the Zither Melody Valley. I might as well send a message back to Master and see if there are any other ways before making a decision." After making up his mind, he quickly took out a small blood-red sword and imprinted his divine sense on it. Then, the blood-red sword quickly flew away. In the blink of an eye, it had disappeared without a trace. It was extremely fast. Time continued to pass in this silence. To immortal cultivators, time was cheap, but it was also very important. However, time would not stop for anyone or anything. It continued to move forward silently. Flowers bloomed and wilted. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. In these 3 months, Di Shitian had been quietly staying in the valley. He did not go out most of the time. Most of the time, he was seizing every minute to accumulate his demonic qi, the qi of heaven and earth, and the essence of the sun and the moon. He was constantly refining the bodies in the demon refining cauldron. Thousands of corpses were being refined one by one. Forming the first demonic vein meant that his cultivation would enter a period of rapid growth. The barrier to the growth of his demonic qi was completely gone. It could be said that his demonic qi was increasing almost every day. The height of the demonic qi in the cauldron was slowly rising. For a long time, there were too few times where he could cultivate in peace. Di Shitian knew that although he had reached this stage by chance, in the eyes of the real experts, he was still like an ant. Although he did not want to think this way, it was the truth. There was no need to deny it. This kind of pressure, this kind of invisible pressure, forced him to seize every inch of time to cultivate. At the same time, he was secretly experimenting to see if he could use the power of the verdant jade zither to eliminate the hidden danger in his body. What was disappointing was that the verdant jade zither was only suppressing it. The power inside was not under his control at all. There was no progress. It was worth mentioning that in these 3 months, he had grasped the various fundamentals of music. How to read the music score, what each note represented, what the strings on the zither were, what the notes were, what they meant, what the strings on the zither were, and what the notes were. During this time, he was like a dry sponge, desperately absorbing all the nutrients. Every bit of knowledge that he heard, he carefully considered, pondered, and thoroughly understood. With D. Shirtian's intelligence, which was not inferior to any genius, learning these things was easy for him. Who? He opened his eyes and looked at the sky. Darkness was gradually replacing the day. Night had arrived, and the moon hung high in the sky. Outside, birds and insects were chirping. Moonlight sprinkled down and fell into the bamboo forest, creating a poetic and picturesque scene. It was a distant mood. In D. Shirtian's eyes, there was a faint trace of anticipation. After 3 months of building the foundation, he had learned all the theoretical knowledge of music. This morning, Katomi had finally said that starting tomorrow, she would officially teach him various skills. In other words, starting tomorrow, he would officially start learning the zither. Big Brother D. A familiar call came from outside the door. Hearing this call, D. Shirtian's body could not help but tremble slightly, and a trace of hesitation appeared between his brows. However, he still walked downstairs, opened the door, and saw Katomi standing in the pavilion. In the pavilion, there were some simple dishes and wine. Seeing D. Shirtian come out, Katomi seemed to be very happy and said softly, "Big Brother D, during this period of time, you have finished learning the basic. Tomorrow you will officially start learning the zither. Katomi specially prepared a few dishes to celebrate with you." "Thank you." D. Shirtian hesitated for a moment, but still walked into the pavilion. The two of them sat down facing each other. Chinshin reached out her jade-like hand and picked up the wine jug, pouring a cup for Sakura. The wine in the cup was dark green in color, and waves of strange wine fragrance constantly permeated the air. Just by smelling it, one would have the urge to drink it. It was very attractive. "This is a century-old wine that my father treasured. Try it and see how it tastes. Usually, even my father could not bear to drink much of it. He kept it like a treasure. These few dishes were also made by me." Katomi glanced at D. Shirtian and greeted him softly. There seemed to be an inexplicable look in her eyes when she looked at him. "Thank you, Miss Katomi." D. Shirtian seemed to avoid her gaze. He picked up the wine cup in front of him and poured it into his mouth. As soon as the wine entered his mouth, there was a warm feeling in his heart. It flowed down his throat and all the way to his stomach. Then, a wonderful taste emerged. In his heart, there seemed to be a wonderful feeling emerging. The strong wine rushed to his head like a stream of air, and all the pores on his body seemed to open in an instant. An indescribable comfort surged in his heart. His whole person felt like he was floating in the air. Good wine. D. Shirtian tasted it for a long time and could not help but spit out 2 words. His praise could be said to be from the bottom of his heart. The taste of this wine was not inferior to the monkey wine at all. It was really wonderful. When Katomi heard it, there seemed to be a smile on her face under the white veil. She took out a zither and put her jade hands on it. She smiled and said, "Good wine also needs to be accompanied by music. It just so happens that Big Brother D will start learning the zither tomorrow. Today, Katomi will play a song for you alone to taste." Okay. When Sakura heard this, he couldn't help but nod his head and said, "When I was in China, I heard people say that Zither Fairy's zither skills had already reached perfection. When the zither sounds, even butterflies would dance. Today, I just happened to experience this legendary sound of nature. Thinking of the rumors he heard at that time, his heart couldn't help but faintly look forward to it. One had to know that in these 3 months, Chinshin had never displayed her zither skills. Kotomi pursed her lips and smiled. Her jade fingers gently plucked the strings. Ding-dong! The melodious sound of the zither sounded. In this quiet night, it was like an orchid in an empty valley. Moreover, after this sound, Kotomi's 10 fingers kept dancing on the zither. The strings were plucked lightly and heavily. The movement of playing the zither was like moving clouds and flowing water. A kind of natural aura flashed from her body. Tian listened attentively. This song, he did not know what it was, but there was a quiet and serene mood in the sound of the zither. Listening to it, one's mind could not help but become empty with the sound of the zither. Immersed in the sound of the zither was really like the sound of nature. In the mind, a kind of relaxed idea slowly emerged. There was nothing in his mind, and his eyes unconsciously closed. When the sound of the zither sounded in Tian's body, a strange force slowly surged to his head. Along with the sound of the zither, his eyelids gradually closed. It was as if he was slowly falling asleep in the sound of the zither. However, just as he was about to fall into a silent sleep, a cool and mysterious force suddenly came from the 7 sins demonic zither in the demon abode. It rushed along the demon vein and quickly rushed to his head. The icy aura also swept away his thoughts of drowsiness on the spot. No, the sound of the zither is wrong. The wine is also wrong. Almost instantly, Tian realized that there was something wrong with the wine that he had just drunk. The strength of the aftereffects was really unimaginable. With his constitution, even if he drank 1,000 cups of ordinary wine, he might not get drunk. However, in silence, the wine rushed to his head, causing him to almost pass out. If one listened carefully, there was a faint hypnotic rhythm in the sound of the zither. When one heard it, the thought of falling into a deep sleep would unconsciously surge forth. Coupled with the wine, even he unknowingly fell for the trick. What is Kotomi trying to do? If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 186. Tian was secretly surprised. If it wasn't for the mysterious power that the 7 sins demonic zither released at the critical moment, he might really have fallen for it. But the strange thing was that he didn't feel any hostility or even killing intent from Kotomi. This made him extremely confused. Under the power of the cool aura released by the 7 sins demonic zither, he was able to keep his consciousness clear. However, he also found that although he had just drunk a small cup of wine, the power of the wine still didn't dissipate. Instead, it was constantly spreading into his body. It wanted to rush to his head. If it wasn't for the protection of the mysterious power, he would probably still be intoxicated. However, although he was awake, Tian also wanted to know why Kotomi suddenly did such a thing. She actually deliberately used such a method to make him pass out. Therefore, he didn't immediately recover. Instead, he closed his eyes and pretended to be intoxicated. His whole body suddenly fell on the table. Crash! With a crisp sound, the wine cup in his hand fell to the ground and broke into several pieces on the spot. Ding! Kotomi's zither sound came to a halt. She put her hand on the zither and looked at Tian, who was lying on the table with a complicated expression. It was quite difficult to understand. Yes, this time, she did deliberately want Tian to be intoxicated. The wine she brought was not ordinary wine. It was also a kind of spiritual wine. The wine brewed by the people of the secular world could only intoxicate people, so it was called ordinary wine. However, the wine brewed by immortal cultivators with various precious materials was often more delicious and had a unique taste. Moreover, it also had various magical powers and a kind of spiritual energy. The wine that de Chertion just drank was called Drunken Immortal Wine. The wine was made from the fruits of a legendary wine fruit tree. It was brewed using all sorts of precious ingredients. Not only was the taste unique, but it also left one with a boundless aftertaste. It was as if all the pores on one's body had opened up. It was a wonderful feeling, as if one had returned to their mother's womb. While sleeping, one could be closer to nature. Drinking it once could cleanse one's soul, making it easier to raise one's realm. This was secondary. The most important thing was that it was very strong. It was very shocking. As long as one drank even a small amount, even a person with a high alcohol tolerance would most likely get drunk. According to legend, even immortals would get drunk if they drank it. If a mortal drank it, they could sleep for 1,000 days. Of course, 1,000 days might be an exaggeration, but the effect of this wine was evident. It was because of this that it was called Drunken Immortal. It was very rare. For some people who loved wine, they just needed to dilute it to have a good taste. It was a precious wine, like the monkey wine. It was a kind of spiritual wine. It was said that very few people now. Drunken Immortal cultivators, Drunken Immortal wine. It was said it was rare to brew of Drunken Immortal wine, and it was a kind of wine. The song she had just played was not simple. It was called the Spring Awakening Song, which meant Spring Awakening Song. It meant that spring had just arrived. Playing it could make the listener feel as if the spring breeze was caressing their faces. It could also evoke the desire to fall asleep, just like a lullaby. When paired with Drunken Immortal wine, how could de Chertion not fall into the trap? Looking at the sleeping Sacre's appearance wasn't too handsome and could only be said to be slightly above average. His face was like a knife, naturally revealing traces of vicissitudes and indifference, giving people a feeling that he had a story. On the contrary, it set off his unique temperament. If he were to walk on the street, he would probably attract the attention of those young girls. In short, he was very stylish and different from the rest. She quietly looked at de Chertion. After a long time, she said faintly, "Big Brother D, what kind of person are you? I hope you won't blame me when you wake up from your drunken stupor. Katomi has a lot of things to tell you." She couldn't help but blush. In the eyes of outsiders, she was the Chin family's eldest Mississippi. She was the apple of the Chin family's eye. No one disrespected her. She could get whatever she wanted. She should be the happiest person in the world. In fact, there were many things in her heart that she couldn't tell anyone. The Chin family's mission for generations was a shackle that they couldn't break free from. It was very heavy. The more one knew, the more they would feel oppressed and powerless. What was even more tragic was that there were many things that couldn't be told to outsiders. This kind of pressure was in the heart for a few years or more. It was a test of one's heart. Katomi usually stayed in the valley. The people she met were the elders or disciples of the Chin family. She had very little contact with outsiders. De Chertion's arrival, his unique style, his unique temperament, and the inexplicable vicissitudes of life that seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mysterious fog made people want to know more about him. All of these gave Katomi a novel feeling. This feeling was something that she couldn't experience in the Chin family. That was why she personally took on the task of teaching de Chertion the Guqin. She wanted to try to understand him. In these 3 months they spent day and night together. Katomi unknowingly developed a subtle feeling for de Chertion. There was an inexplicable color in her eyes when she looked at him. "Big Brother D, I don't know why, but when I first saw you outside the Guqin territory, I had a feeling of wanting to get close to you. That's why I left you in the valley and personally asked Father to let me teach you the Guqin." Katomi's eyes gradually softened. Looking at the sleeping de Chertion, she only had the courage to speak the words in her heart under such circumstances. "Although you don't know how to play the Guqin, You are very serious about learning it. Looking at how serious you are, I can't help but want to tell you everything I know. Big Brother D, in the past few days, there seems to be something in my heart. I always hope that the morning will pass slowly. When I can't see you, your shadow will always appear in my mind. Katomi seemed to be talking to herself. She revealed her thoughts bit by bit. Her eyes were blurred. I think, like in the story my mother told me, I fell in love with someone. Her face unconsciously turned dark red. An alluring pink appeared on her snow-white neck. Katomi touched her face. There was a restless heat rushing to her face. It was faintly hot. It was undeniable that Di Shirtian did have a unique charm that attracted women unconsciously. Even Di Shirtian did not know that after he absorbed the verdant Qilin into his body, the power emitted by the verdant Qilin suppressed his sorrow meridian. It also gave him a strange aura. The verdant Qilin belonged to the Qin family. No one could use it except those with the Qin family bloodline. Naturally, this aura also made Katomi feel a faint sense of closeness. She wanted to unconsciously open her heart. This almost fatal aura unconsciously attracted Katomi. In addition, in the past 3 months, they spent almost every day together and met often. Katomi, who had never experienced anything, slowly imprinted Di Shirtian's shadow in her heart. The feeling that she had never felt before made Katomi feel an inexplicable fear in her heart. Thinking of Di Shirtian's indifferent temperament, she did not have the courage to tell him. In her anxiety, she finally thought of such a way. She silently poured out the fear and strange feeling in her heart to Di Shirtian, who she thought was in a coma. Who would have known that Sakura wasn't really unconscious, but was still conscious? Hearing the Zither Heart girl's confession as if she was in love, he couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. She is a human and I am a demon. In fact, as early as these few days, Di Shirtian had already felt that these days, Qinshin's gaze towards him contained a kind of inexplicable expression. He was also slightly aware of it, so he had always maintained an indifferent expression. They sat together and only talked about the Guqin, not saying much else. After learning the Qin, he went back to his room to meditate. He did not expect Katomi to really fall in love with him. From Sakura's point of view, he really didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Firstly, he didn't have much thoughts in this aspect. Most of his thoughts were on how to improve his own strength and how to become stronger. Secondly, thinking about his identity, one was a demon and the other was a human. The current demon race and the human race had long been incompatible like fire and water. Under such circumstances, how could he be in the mood to have a passionate love affair with Katomi? During this period, he also saw that Katomi was indeed very kind. She had a good impression of him, but it did not involve feelings. Hearing Qinshin's words, he couldn't help but feel surprised and bitter. Brother D, many people think that the Qin clan is very noble, but they don't know how much the Qin clan has sacrificed for a mission and for the entire Zijin mainland. As a descendant of the Qin clan, I have an inescapable responsibility since I was born. Or perhaps, Katomi is no longer qualified to have a relationship of her own. Perhaps my feelings are no longer up to me to decide. Katomi used the drunken immortal wine to intoxicate you this time. Actually, I just want to talk to you. Perhaps you will never know. I will bury today in the bottom of my heart forever. I won't let anyone know. As she spoke, there was a faint aura in her voice. As she looked at the incomplete moon in the sky, a faint sadness gradually appeared on her body. Her responsibility to the Qin clan had long deprived her of the right to love. Silently looking at Di Shirtian, she sighed faintly. She got up and walked into the bamboo house. Taking out a blanket, she draped it over Di Shirtian. Carrying her Qin, she walked towards the direction of the manor. Her graceful figure gradually disappeared into the darkness. At this moment, in the Qin clan manor, Qin Xian and Madame Qin were standing in the garden. Their gazes seemed to be looking at the purple bamboo forest. After a long while, a trace of sadness appeared on Madame Qin's face. She sighed. It's been hard on Xian. Qin Xian took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "This has been the mission of the Qin clan's descendants for generations. The Qin clan's ancestor left behind a message that the green silk zither will definitely appear in the next 100 years. However, we are not allowed to search for it. Only outsiders can obtain it through chance. Therefore, this is Xian's responsibility." To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 187. Furthermore, when Xian was born, we asked the clairvoyant master to calculate that Xian's future husband would be the one who would take out the Lu Qi zither. As you know, this was calculated by the clairvoyant master at the cost of 30 years of his life. Generally speaking, there is absolutely no mistake. For the Qin family, even as her father, I have wronged Xian. Qin Xian raised his head to look at the waning moon above his head. The falling moonlight carried traces of sadness and beauty. He was the head of the family and had to consider the entire family. The mission of the Qin family was related to the fate of countless living beings. There was absolutely no room for error. If there was a mistake, the Qin family would be sinners for eternity. This was a crime he could not bear, and no one could bear. "Husband, what do you think of this Di Shirtian?" Madame Qin did not seem to want to talk about the previous topic, and suddenly changed the topic to Di Shirtian. Qin Xian pondered for a moment and shook his head. "I still can't see through him. In the past 3 months, he has indeed been learning the zither in a well-behaved manner. Other than learning the zither, he has been cultivating in his room and has almost never left the valley. It seems that he has the appearance of an ascetic cultivator. Moreover, his cultivation is rather restrained. It seems that he is only at the foundation establishment stage, but his true strength seems to be shrouded by a layer of fog. It is very strange." A strange expression appeared on his face. It was definitely rare in his life that he could not completely see through someone after observing for 3 months. Forget it. Perhaps he is really just a zither lover. What he is learning is the ordinary zither skills of the mortal world. He has also taken out a valuable gift. When he is done learning, he should leave on his own. Qin Xian could only say so. In any case, in the Guqin Valley, even if someone really wanted to cause trouble, they might not be able to do anything. And on the other side, after Katomi left, Di Shirtian was also afraid that someone would suspect, so he directly laid on the table and slept for the entire night. When it was almost dawn, the sound of a zither suddenly rang out in the valley. Huff! Although he was sleeping, the demon-smelting cauldron inside of him never stopped working. It continued to refine the body inside of the cauldron. Before he knew it, he had already refined 1/5 of the body. Opening his eyes, Di Shirtian picked up the blanket that was draped over his back. There seemed to be a trace of fragrance left on it. Looking at the blanket, thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind. A complicated look appeared in his eyes. After a long time, he shook his head and smiled bitterly before putting it into his bag of holding. Ding dong, the melodious sound of the zither slowly spread out in the valley, like a small spring flowing out. It contained an aura that calmed one's mind, making the listener feel as if they were beside a quiet stream, listening to the stream flowing. His state of mind became inexplicably tranquil, and his entire soul was elevated by the zither music. "What song is this?" Di Shirtian listened carefully for a moment. His eyes suddenly revealed a kind of bright light. His body suddenly stood up. His heart was like a violent wave rolling violently. He seemed to be very concerned. His expression kept changing. "This song can actually dissolve the sorrow in my meridian of sorrow. What song is this? It has such a miraculous power." That's right, when he was listening to this song, his mind suddenly began to have a tendency to gradually merge with the sadness emitted by the meridian of sorrow. His mind could feel the sadness, but he could maintain his mind and will and not sink into it. This was simply inconceivable. One had to know that all this time, in the past few months, he had been thinking of all kinds of methods, but there was no way to completely fuse with the sadness emitted by the sorrow meridian. This sadness came from the sorrow meridian, and it was impossible to get rid of it. Moreover, if it was removed, it would not be called the sorrow meridian. There was only one way, and that was to fuse his state of mind with the sadness, so that his state of mind could be compatible with the sadness. Only then would he not be affected by it, and the true sorrow meridian would be completed. At that time, there would be no need for the Lu Qichin to suppress it, and he would be able to freely absorb the power of sadness between heaven and earth. At that time, the sorrow meridian would truly belong to him, and the sorrow meridian would be completed. Then, he would be able to create a second demonic meridian. Di Shirtian did not expect that the hidden danger that he had not been able to solve after thinking of countless methods would change because of a song. How could he not be moved? I must get the score of this song. In an instant, an idea appeared in his mind. This was a completely subconscious action. As long as he got the score, it meant that the hidden danger in his body could be eliminated. It meant that he could continue to improve. In his heart there was a natural desire to possess. His body moved, and he walked in the direction of the sound of the zither, listening as he walked forward. He felt that his state of mind was able to maintain tranquility in the power of the zither, like a clear mirror, without a speck of dust. Only when he was in contact with the sadness could he maintain a clear state of mind, and not be affected by it. He slowly experienced the artistic conception in it, and under such circumstances, he could slowly fuse with the sadness. It was wonderful. Step by step, he walked forward. Unknowingly, he had already passed through the purple bamboo forest. An elegant villa appeared in front of them. This was the Qin family's villa. In front of the door, an old man was sitting on a chair. He was listening to the sound of the zither, looking very natural. He didn't seem to have the slightest bit of Zhen Yuan on his body. It was as if he was just an ordinary old man. His hair and beard were all white. However, when Di Shirtian arrived in front of the villa, the old man opened his eyes naturally and sized him up. His eyes suddenly shone with a strange light. After a long time, he nodded and said, "You are the little guy who came to the Zither Melody Valley to learn the zither, but not the zither attacks. You look good, but you are not a disciple of the Qin clan, so you cannot enter the villa." These were very ordinary words, but in Di Shirtian's ears, his heart unconsciously tightened. He felt that if he disobeyed, something bad would happen. Naturally, he did not think that the person guarding the door was an ordinary person. He stood in front of the door, not moving forward, and just listened to the zither quietly. The sound of the zither lasted for a while, then slowly faded away. He opened his eyes, looked at the old man in front of the door, and asked, "Excuse me, old mister, what is the name of this song?" There was a trace of humility in his voice. "Young man, it is good to be humble. This song is called the Heart-Cleansing Bodhi Song. If you listen to it often, it can get rid of your inner demons, keep your mind clear, and cleanse your soul. It can get rid of irritability and other benefits. It can also purify evil energy, demonic energy, fierce energy, and so on. When cultivated to a high level, one song can purify the souls of the dead." The old man looked at Sakura with a meaningful gaze and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Little fellow, if you want to join the Qin family, then, not to mention the heart-cleansing Bodhi song, you can even learn other tunes. Many thanks." When Di Shirtian heard this, he shook his head, thanked the old man, and turned to leave. During this period of time, he had faintly sensed that the Qin clan was definitely not simple. Their existence was even more mysterious. Just the little things he heard last night made the Qin clan even more difficult to understand in his heart. Mission. What exactly was the mission? A mission that the Qin clan had been guarding for generations was definitely not an ordinary secret. And the power that was truly hidden after the inheritance of such a clan was definitely unimaginable. On the surface, it did not seem like much, but with his sharp senses, he could faintly sense that there was an unbelievably powerful existence in the Qin clan. The heart-cleansing Bodhi song is very useful to me. I must think of a way to get it. Otherwise, the hidden danger in my body will be difficult to resolve. Di Shurtian secretly made up his mind. No matter what method he used, he had to obtain this song. Sister Tianxiang, Sister Tianxiang, come quickly. Brother Yuan's monkey wine has been brewed. In the myriad demon valley, Di Shurtian desperately improved his strength while silently learning skills. Everyone in the valley could be said to be holding back their energy and seizing every inch of time to constantly improve their strength. In the past 3 months, Qi He relied on his own accumulation and the foundation he had all along to open his third meridian, completely unobstructing all the meridians in his body. He had reached the realm of meridians throughout his body. As for Bai Yu, Kong, and the others, they had already opened their second meridian and were attacking the third meridian. Each of them was using their incomparable spirit to improve their strength so that they could help their king in the future. Little White, with the direct guidance of Bai Hu and various medicinal pills, could be said to be the fastest in the valley. With Bai Hu's protection, in just a few months, he had broken through 2 meridians in his body. Now, he was consolidating his foundation. As long as his foundation was consolidated, he could continue to attack the third meridian. In her heart, she also thought that she could help her brother. On this day, Little White ran excitedly to Bai Hu's cave residence and shouted. His mouth was full of joy. Bai Hu opened her eyes and saw Little White. She smiled and hugged him in her arms. She didn't know why, but although Little White was also cultivating, the growth of his body was quite slow. There was almost no change, which was surprising. That little monkey actually brewed the monkey wine so quickly. That's good, let's go take a look. This batch of wine seems to be better than the previous ones. The monkey wine consolidates one's foundation, and is the best spirit wine for building one's foundation. With this spirit wine, Little White, your cultivation speed will definitely be faster. Your foundation will also be more solid. Bai Hu's eyes also revealed a hint of a smile. The injuries in her body had not been completely healed until now. If she had this monkey wine, her injuries would recover even faster. Moreover, the spirit wine consolidates one's foundation and is very good for the body. Yes, if brother knew, he would definitely be very happy. Little White nodded vigorously in Bai Hu's arms, urging her to hurry over. However, he couldn't help but mention Di Shurtian. Your brother still doesn't know how comfortable his life is in the human world. He actually left this mess to me. When he comes back, see if I will forgive him. Bai Hu curled her lips and scolded softly. However, there was an inexplicable emotion in it. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 188. Xiao Bai blinked and stared at Bai Hu's face, which would make any woman jealous. She asked curiously, Sister Tianxiang, when Xiao Bai was caught by the bad guys of the Thousand Beasts sect, I heard them say that a man and a woman together are husband and wife. They also said that fighting is love, and scolding is love. These days, Xiao Bai saw that sister often scolded my brother. Do you like him? Xiao Bai asked in a childish voice with a trace of curiosity in her eyes. It sounded like a naive child asking about something she didn't know. Bah! Bai Hu's face flushed red. She reached out and patted Xiao Bai hard. However, when her hand landed on Xiao Bai's head, it was like she was gently stroking it. she said. Xiao Bai, what are you talking about? How can I like your brother? How is this possible? She quickly denied it and snorted. It's still too early for your brother to be my husband. I, Su Tianxiang, will not like a demon clan member who is not as strong as me. Wait until he becomes an expert of the demon clan. While denying it, she couldn't help but question herself in her heart. Did she really have no feelings for Di Shirtian? Even she didn't have an answer to this question. Since Di Shirtian was gone, she often thought of him after she finished cultivating. When she thought of how he left a large number of subordinates in the Myriad Demon Valley to her to take care of, she couldn't help but gnash her teeth in hatred. Hee, Sister Tianxiang's face is red. Xiao Bai smiled and winked. Suddenly, a petite figure appeared in his mind. His expression slowly dimmed as he said in a deep voice, "If only Elder Sister Zifei was still here. I hope that Elder Sister Feifei is safe and sound." She thought of Zifei, who had always been the closest to her. She had searched countless times but still couldn't find any trace of her. "Okay, let's go to the little monkey's wine pool to take a look." A demonic wind blew around Bai Hu out of thin air. It wrapped them up and quickly rushed to the wine cave where Yuan Kong was. The brewing of the monkey wine was a ladder that could let all the demon clans in the Myriad Demon Valley soar. There was absolutely no room for carelessness. Not long after, Bai Hu brought Little White to the entrance of the wine pool. Yuan Tian was jumping up and down excitedly in front of the cave. His two monkey claws were scratching his body, appearing to be unusually restless. Seeing Bai Hu arrive, he hurriedly said with a trace of respect, "Madam Bai Hu, the monkey wine has been successfully brewed. I was just about to invite you to see what should be done next." "Madam?" Bai Hu slightly frowned, but there was a faint trace of inexplicable joy in her heart. She did not deny it and said, "Well, let's go in and see. Yuan Kong, how much monkey wine is brewed this time?" The first thing that came to his mind was naturally the amount of wine. The amount of wine represented the foundation of the entire Myriad Demon Valley. "Madam, His Majesty hasn't been around for a while, but my ape clan has been following His Majesty's instructions to collect gourds. We've collected no less than 5,000 gourds, and the wine we've brewed this time should be able to fill all of them. Leave behind a wine guide, and after filling it, we can immediately start brewing new monkey wine." Now, with the cultivation, the wisdom of Yuan Tian's subordinates was also increasing day by day, and they began to approach adults. However, their loyalty to Di Shirtian had long penetrated into their bones, and there would never be disloyalty. In this regard, even Bai Hu had to admire Di Shirtian's means and foresight. When he was in the Tiger Hill mountain range, he could think of subduing Bai Wei and the others when he was still a spiritual beast. The subordinates he subdued in this way were absolutely loyal. After subduing them, he used all kinds of means, kindness and power, to make all the subordinates abandon all disloyalty and really put everything on him. In the future, if the Myriad Demon Valley grew stronger, Bai Wei, Yuan Tian, Ing Kong, and the others would all be the main subordinates under Di Shirtian. In the future, they would all have a pivotal position. So much. Bai Hu could not help but be surprised, but then she was overjoyed. The more spiritual wine there was, the more profound the foundation of the Myriad Demon Valley would be. Under the lead of Yuan Tian, they walked into the cave. The fragrance of the wine that came to their faces made them involuntarily excited. The qi and blood all over their bodies were active, and the fragrance of the wine contained a lot of strange power. When he saw the wine pool, he saw that it was filled with a golden, amber-like liquid. Looking at it, he couldn't help but have the desire to possess it. The wine fragrance was emitted from the pool. Bai Hu tasted it with a ladle and found that this batch of spiritual wine was really different. The power contained in it was not inferior to that of the 100-year-old monkey wine. It could be called the king grade of the monkey wine. It was no wonder that all the precious medicinal materials used in the wine this time, such as 1,000-year-old cinnabar fruit, ginseng, glossy Ganoderma, and so on. Each of them was an incomparably precious spiritual essence of the world. If the wine brewed in this way was not of the king grade, even God would not be willing. Without any hesitation, Bai Hu immediately ordered Yuan Tian to lead the monkey clan to put the wine into the gourd one by one, seal it, and move it to Di Shirtian's cave residence. However, the wine pool could not be dried up. 1/5 of it must be left as a liquor. In this way, it would save a lot of time when brewing the second bat. Not to mention that the Myriad Demon Valley had entered a stage of rapid improvement. A major event had also happened in China. China's old emperor finally died at the age of 50 because of a serious illness. The emperor only had 2 sons, one was Hua Wenwu, and the other was Hua Qing. Originally, Hua Qing wanted to use the power of the Hall of Worship to ascend the throne. However, the Hall of Worship was destroyed by Di Shirtian, and Hua Wenwu was the legitimate heir. With his own efforts, he contacted all the ministers. Almost 90% of them were supporters of the imperial court. The rest were neutral, and the rest were people who colluded with Hua Qing. Naturally, strength had an absolute advantage. There was almost no accident, and he rightfully ascended the throne. This was only expected. It was normal for the throne to be handed over. Moreover, China was only one of the 3 countries in the East, and it was a world dominated by cultivators. Naturally, there would not be much of a reaction. What really shocked the entire China, whether it was cultivators or ordinary people, was the first edict that Hua Wenwu issued when he ascended the throne. The imperial edict was as follows. The East was divided into 3, and the fighting between each other continued for thousands of years. There were countless deaths and injuries. However, all the people of China had never succumbed to any strong enemy for hundreds of years. Strong enemies were everywhere, eyeing them covetously. Their martial spirit could not be extinguished. Before I ascended the throne, I had gained experience in a mysterious mountain forest and was fortunate enough to meet the sacred beast Black Tiger. I was personally sought by the sacred beast and was bestowed with the bloodline of the sacred beast. Therefore, I shall have the bloodline of the sacred beast. I am the Emperor of China, and the people of China shall be the descendants of the sacred beast Black Tiger. At this point, China shall have a totem. The sacred beast shall be the totem. The sacred beast shall protect the people of China. Unify the 3 countries. When this imperial edict came out, it could be said to be a heavy bomb that was thrown into the entire China. In the eyes of ordinary people, the sacred beast was a supreme existence like the immortal God. It was sacred and inviolable. It was definitely an incomparably glorious thing to have the sacred beast as the totem in one's own country. Moreover, after Hua Wenwu became the emperor, his actions could be said to be swift and fierce. As soon as the imperial edict came out, he immediately gathered all the skilled craftsmen in the capital and began to sculpt a statue of the Black Tiger that Di Shirtian had once given him. It was to be erected in the center of the entire capital. According to the design, the statue was more than 30 meters tall. It had to be said that Hua Wenwu was quite smart. He knew that if he rashly made the totem, it might be resisted by the people of the whole country. Therefore, he changed his approach. First, he positioned Di Shirtian's identity as the sacred beast. Then, he said that he had the bloodline of the sacred beast and was the descendant of the sacred beast. He completely closed the relationship between China and Di Shirtian. With this series of methods, it was much easier for the people of China to accept these changes. In the eyes of the superiors, the people were the easiest to fool. Their nature was even more simple. As soon as the imperial edict came out, many people began to accept it. What an honor it was to be the descendant of the sacred beast. Just based on this point, those who opposed had to think twice. After all, once the situation changed, the descendant of the sacred beast meant that he was superior and had a noble status. Therefore, Hua Wenwu's grasp of the people's hearts was beginning to mature. This move could be said to be a beautiful move. The matter of this totem was almost being perfected day by day. However, this was not what De Chertion cared about. Ding dong, the purple bamboo faintly had a kind of mystery and nobility. The purple bamboo forest formed was unusually pleasing to the eye. In the bamboo forest, there was a bamboo house and a bamboo pavilion. In the pavilion, a man and a woman sat opposite each other. The man was dressed in a black robe, exuding a faint vicissitude and indifference. There was also a unique kind of majesty that made people feel restrained. The woman was dressed in a plain white lady's dress. Her face was covered with a white veil. Sitting in the pavilion, she looked unusually quiet. Her eyes were looking at the man, faintly exuding a trace of gentleness. The man and the woman were naturally De Chertion and Katomi. The one who was playing the guqin was De Chertion. His hands were constantly moving on the guqin, plucking the strings one by one. The sound of the zither was crisp and smooth. It made people feel as if they were in the middle of a high mountain and flowing water. However, in some places the connection of the zither sounds was a little jerky. What was even stranger was that there was a unique dominance in the zither sounds. It was only me. It made the guqin sound very different from the original song. This song was a secular guqin song called High Mountains and Flowing Water. Originally, the high mountains and flowing water should express the kind of natural and beautiful mood of nature, as if the feeling of being in the famous mountains and rivers, making people reluctant to go back. However, in De Chertion's hands, it was completely different. The high mountains were mountains. What others played was the kind of scenery of famous mountains. What he played was a kind of peak that reached into the sky. The mountains and rivers were the kind of surging waves, as if one was in the middle of a surging river. It was simply the polar opposite. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 189. This might have something to do with De Chertion's unique temperament and mentality. After all, it was impossible to ask a king of beasts or a tyrant of beasts to play such a lingering song. Everyone's style of music was different. Domineering and I alone seemed to be De Chertion's style of music in the future. Katomi could not help but exclaim in her heart as she listened to this song. She did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. High mountains and flowing water, the artistic conception of being in the midst of famous mountains and great rivers was indeed intoxicating. However, De Chertion's unique and domineering style of music also had its own unique charm. Her talent in the zither itself could be called a genius of a generation. She once had the magical experience of attracting butterflies to dance with a song. When it came to the zither, she had already reached the acme of perfection. Naturally, she did not have any rotten thoughts. Instead, she felt that this was very good. Everyone could have their own unique style of music. This way, they could truly form their own uniqueness. Ding dong! In the last note of the zither, it was as if a mountain had risen from the ground and pierced straight into the clouds. Although the zither music stopped, the momentum still did not dissipate. Big Brother D, this high mountains and flowing water of yours is very unique. It has indeed played out a style that belongs to you. However, you are still a beginner after all. Your grasp of the tone and the rhythm of the strings are still a little shaky. Your technique is still not proficient. Overall, it's already very good. Katomi looked at De Chertion. The gaze in her eyes was unusually gentle. A trace of affection was hidden in her eyes. She did not have any scruples about speaking out her own opinions about this song. Regardless of whether it was its strengths or weaknesses, she did not hide them. De Chertion nodded. His gaze unconsciously moved away. He did not look at her for too long. Ever since he heard Katomi's confession that day, he could not accept it and could only pretend that he did not know. He treated it with his usual indifference. Miss Katomi, I've almost finished learning high mountains and flowing water. However, I've heard someone say that there's a song called Heart-Cleansing Bodhi Song that can calm one's mind when played. Why don't we teach it the next song? As Di Shirtian spoke, he suddenly changed the topic to Heart-Cleansing Bodhi Song. He just wanted to test it out and see if he could learn this song through normal means. The Heart-Cleansing Bodhi Song was too important to him. After listening to it that day, he could clearly feel that his sadness was merging with his mind, and there was a tendency to find a balance. However, after the song ended, when he touched it again, he still had a terrible feeling of being trapped in a sad state. It was impossible for his mind to remain clear in the face of such intense sorrow. Without the protection of the heart-cleansing Bodhi song, the idea of fusion was just empty talk. This also made him realize that the heart-cleansing Bodhi song might be the only way to solve his hidden danger. He had no friendship with the other members of the Qin family. Usually, the disciples of the Qin family would cultivate in the villa or quietly learn various songs to cultivate their own sentiments. They did not have much contact with him. Apart from knowing Katomi, he really did not know how to learn this song from other people. However, after talking with the old man guarding the door, he also knew that this song might be the legendary song of sound attack. Such a song was a classic in the Qin family. How could it be easily taught to an outsider? After thinking of various ways, he could not come up with a good plan. He could only see if he could open a door with Katomi. Heart-cleansing Bodhi song? A hint of surprise flashed across Katomi's eyes. She glanced at Di Shirtian and said strangely, "This song is one of the immortal songs. It's a song that my Qin family has never taught to outsiders. Very few ordinary people know about it. How did you know about this song?" The tunes of the secular world were categorized as mortal tunes in the world. Those tunes with mystical powers were called immortal tunes, and those of a higher level were naturally the legendary divine tunes. The seven sins divine melody in the ancient scroll that Di Shirtian had obtained belonged to the divine category. Every song was divided into 3 grades: high, middle, and low. When Di Shirtian heard this, his mind spun rapidly. He said, "A few days ago, when I was in the bamboo forest, I suddenly heard someone playing the heart-cleansing Bodhi song in the Qin family villa. When I heard it, I felt very comfortable and my entire mind felt very peaceful. I liked it very much, so I casually asked, 'If it's an immortal song of the Qin family, just pretend that I didn't ask. After all, I have an agreement with your Qin family. I only want to learn some ordinary songs from the secular world. I did not ask to learn an immortal song.'" Big Brother D. When Katomi heard this, her expression changed. She pondered for a moment, then raised her head and said, "Immortal songs are the foundation of our Qin family. They are very precious. If you are not an official disciple of the Qin family, it is impossible for you to inherit them. As a member of the Qin family, Katomi cannot violate this rule." There was a trace of apology in her voice. She did have some feelings for Di Shirtian in her heart. If she taught him a song privately, it was absolutely impossible. Everyone had some kind of persistence in their hearts. In her heart, the importance of the family surpassed everything. For the mission of the family, she could even bear the pain of giving up her life's happiness. When Di Shirtian heard this, he was not too disappointed. He hurriedly said, "You don't have to make things difficult for me. I was just saying, I would never dare to ask for immortal songs." However, Katomi suddenly gave him a pleasant surprise. She smiled and said, "Big Brother D, although I can't teach you the heart-cleansing Bodhi song, if you want to listen to it, Katomi can play it for you when I teach you every day." The morning was far away. After Katomi left, Di Shirtian sat alone in the pavilion, looking up at the rising sun. His gaze was unusually deep. "Katomi, oh Katomi, I didn't expect that I would feel guilty for scheming against you. I really don't know how to face you in the future." He sighed inwardly. When he heard Katomi agree to play for him every day, he did not know why, but he felt an inexplicable sense of guilt in his heart. He felt guilty for taking advantage of a young girl's pure feelings. If he hadn't heard Chin Xian's confession back then, he definitely wouldn't have felt the slightest bit of guilt for what he did today. But the problem was that he clearly heard that the Chin family's eldest young miss actually had a good impression of him. Thinking about it, he really wished that he had passed out drunk back then. That's right. Most of today's conversation was within his calculations. After he returned, he thought about the heart-cleansing Bodhi song carefully. It must be the Chin family's secret. It would be extremely difficult to learn it. Therefore, after thinking about it for a few days, he finally came up with a compromise. He could choose not to learn the song. After all, if he did not play it himself, he could listen to others play it. It would still be effective. Therefore, he thought of Katomi. Others might not know this song, but Katomi definitely knew it. If he directly asked Katomi to play a song every day, he expected that Katomi would not refuse based on her feelings for him. However, doubts would be inevitable. If this attracted the attention of the other members of the Chin family, there would be the risk of being exposed. That was why he had made it clear that he wanted to learn the heart-cleansing Bodhi song, and had Chinshin bring up the idea of playing it every day. By swapping their roles, even if someone were to suspect him, he would be less of a suspect. In this, Katomi's feelings for him could be said to be the most important. In other words, Di Shirtian completely made use of Katomi's feelings. To be honest, Di Shirtian himself did not like such a method. In fact, he did not like it very much. Forget it. This time I, Di Shirtian, owe you. As long as my hidden danger is eliminated, I will naturally return it to you. The hidden danger in his body needed to be eliminated immediately. He did not have much time to waste on the sorrow pulse. Therefore, he did not hesitate to bear a trace of guilt in his heart. This time, he wanted to use the heart-cleansing Bodhi song that Katomi played every day to eliminate the hidden danger in his body. This was the only way now. Otherwise, even if there were other ways to eliminate the hidden danger, he would not be able to find them in a short time. While he was deep in thought, suddenly there was a sound of footsteps. Hee, Brother D, Xiao Dai is here to see you again. Do you welcome her? He turned around and saw a petite figure walking over. She had a mischievous look on her face as she winked at him with a grin on her face. It's you. Why do you have time to come and see me? Di Shirtian saw her and nodded slightly. The person who came was none other than Lin Dai, who sold him the vermilion bird elixir technique. After she got the monkey wine, she left at will and joined the Chin family and became a disciple of the Chin family. It was said that she was about to become an official disciple. After knowing that Di Shirtian also lived in the valley, she would come over to talk whenever she was free. She was also lively, like a little sister next door. Brother D, you will make Xiao Dai sad if you say that. Can't I come to see you for no reason? Lin Dai's face changed and showed a trace of bitterness, as if she was very unhappy. However, it disappeared immediately and she returned to her normal self. She said with a smile, Today, I went out with a few sisters. Do you know that there is an interesting thing happening in the imperial capital now? Brother D, have you heard of totems? Her tone changed and she suddenly mentioned the matter of totems. When these words fell into Di Shirtian's ears, his originally indifferent mind suddenly became excited. A flash of light quickly flashed in his eyes. He thought to himself, totems, could it be that Hua Wenwu has already ascended the throne and started to do the things I told him to do? Well, calculating the time, it should be about time. I have already helped him to clean up the consecration hall. There is almost no obstruction to his ascension to the throne. Totems, this was what he asked Hua Wenwu to do. It was related to the matter of converging faith. He instinctively felt that faith would have extraordinary benefits for him in the future. It was definitely not as simple as ordinary people imagined. De Chertion was able to move unhindered in the business world in his previous life. A pair of sharp eyes was crucial. It was precisely because of this that he could see the extraordinariness of the jade slip at a glance. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 190. Faith was mysterious to begin with. It was definitely not as useless as it was in the eyes of ordinary cultivators. Therefore, he decisively made a move and supported Hua Wenwu without hesitation. He just wanted to test what kind of existence faith was and what kind of help it could bring him. Totem? What kind of totem? Of course, De Chertion knew what the totem was, but he would not reveal it in front of others. The totem itself was a secret. In the whole of China, the number of people who knew the real inside story of the totem was definitely less than 5. He pretended to be puzzled and shook his head. Lin Dai was obviously a lively person. When she saw that even De Chertion did not know, she seemed to have a sense of accomplishment. She chattered, "Big brother D, you don't know. When the new emperor of China ascended the throne, he suddenly announced that he had the bloodline of the sacred beast Black Tiger and was a descendant of the sacred beast. Therefore, all the people of China are the descendants of the sacred beast Black Tiger and respect the Black Tiger as their totem." A large number of craftsmen were also dispatched to the imperial capital to build a statue day and night, preparing to set it up in the center of the imperial capital. I went to see it with my other sisters. The statue is almost finished. That black tiger is so majestic. This little girl didn't seem to be scheming at all. In front of Sakura, it was as if she was spilling beans. She rattled out everything that she knew, as if she was presenting a treasure, telling him everything in full detail. It seems that Hua Wenwu did a good job and did not disappoint my expectations. If this is the case, I can give him some benefits appropriately. De Chertion listened while muttering to himself in his heart. He also had a good evaluation of Hua Wenwu's actions, especially when he said that he was the descendant of the sacred beast. Not only did it eliminate the resistance of the people to the greatest extent, but it also imperceptibly increased his reputation and made him sit more firmly on the chair. The means of a superior were displayed invisibly. It was very difficult for ordinary people to detect it. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, but he still said perfunctorily, "Oh, if that's the case, I'll have to go to the imperial capital to take a look if I have the chance." The totem was already in progress, but the golden body had not been completely molded yet. When it was molded and erected, the statue would be a place to store faith. At that time, as long as the people of China worshipped him, the power of faith they emitted would naturally enter the statue. According to the jade slip, such a statue would become different from an ordinary statue when it gathered the power of faith. The more power of faith it gathered, the more mystical the golden body would become. If the golden body was placed here, it would gather the power of faith for 8 to 10 years. At that time, even if the cultivators saw it, they would have a feeling of being suppressed unconsciously. It truly possessed supreme power. This kind of power was not his own, but was given by all his believers. This was because when they prayed, they would naturally think of the totem in their hearts. The totem was powerful, invincible, and so on. When this kind of thought was superimposed, incredible power would appear. It was like the Buddha statues in some ancient temples. The Buddha statues that had been passed down for hundreds or thousands of years would have a kind of power that people did not dare to look at easily. This was the effect of faith. There was another point. At that time, the golden body of the totem was placed in the imperial capital. If China was in crisis, the totem would naturally send out a kind of protective power to protect the imperial capital. It could be said to be incomparably wonderful. All these were what De Chertion saw from the jade slip and figured out by himself. But he did not see it with his own eyes. He really intended to go and see it with his own eyes when the statue was erected. Lin Dai could not stay with Di Shirtian for long. After saying some interesting things, she reluctantly left, leaving Di Shirtian alone to meditate. The next day, when Katomi came again, as expected, she played the heart-cleansing Bodhi song for Di Shirtian. When listening to the song, his mind was once again promoted to the unique state of clarity. At this time, he let his mind come into contact with the sadness. As expected, they slowly began to merge. Or it could be said that his mind was slowly adapting to the existence of the sadness. This kind of adaptation was quite slow. Even with the heart-cleansing Bodhi song, it still could not speed up. It could only merge bit by bit and adapt bit by bit. It was estimated that if he could listen to the song every day and merge with the power emitted by the song, it would take at least about half a year to a year. However, Di Shirtian was not just listening to the song. Intentionally or unintentionally, he silently watched the rhythm and notes played by Katomi. Then, he remembered it in his mind with his powerful memory. Other people's things will always be other people's. Only when you hold it in your own hands can it truly belong to you. He was deliberately learning the heart-cleansing Bodhi song. If he wanted to shape the demon vein, he couldn't just shape the sorrow vein. He had to shape the other desire veins as well. At that time, if there were any hidden dangers, he couldn't just stay in the Guqin Melody Valley and let the Guqin heart play for him. Self-rescue. He had to master the instinct to rescue himself. However, this heart-cleansing Bodhi song was indeed worthy of being one of the immortal songs. The changes in notes and rhythm could be said to be quite complicated. The most important thing was the technique used during playing. It was obviously completely different from playing an ordinary song. Di Shirtian guessed that this technique might be the true essence of the zither song. After all, a divine song needed to be filled with true yuan in the 10 fingers. When playing, the true yuan would enter the strings. Only then could the true yuan unleash its unique power. Just by looking at the notes and rhythm, it was slightly difficult to remember. However, to truly learn the essence of the song, one had to know the unique technique of the song. Di Shirtian knew very well that he had no reason to ask Katomi to teach him. The only way was to observe carefully and hope that he could deduce it after a long day. After listening to the song, Qinshin continued to teach other songs, and continued to train the playing skills and so on. Every day was very regular. Learning the zither and cultivating, neither of them missed the other. In the blink of an eye, time flew. 3 months later, in the imperial capital, Di Shirtian's totem was completed. He also received Hua Wenwu's notice, and went to take a look personally. The totem was unusually tall and mighty. It had pitch-black hair and a purple king pattern on its forehead. Its head was raised high proudly and looked at the void. Its body exuded a domineering aura that shot up to the sky. The totem was obviously carved by a master. Even its aura was vivid and lifelike. It seemed to be looking down on the common people. Under the natural power of the totem, many people were immediately convinced after it was erected in the center of the imperial capital. When Di Shirtian was in the imperial capital, he clearly perceived that there were wisps of mysterious power emerging from these people. Some were heterogeneous, some were pure, and all of them went into the totem. The totem was like a bottomless pit. No matter how much power of faith went in, it was not satisfied at all. It could be said that it swallowed as much as it came. Because Di Shirtian himself was the object of the people's faith, he could feel the existence of the power of faith. He could also clearly see wisps of milky white gas entering the totem. He could also feel the mysterious power in it, but he could not use it. He guessed that he probably needed to break the restriction in the jade slip to know its true use. He was not too anxious about this. The totem had just been established, and there were not many believers. However, he believed that under the imperceptible influence of time, in the future, the totem would be deeply rooted in the hearts of all the people in China. At that time, it would naturally be a matter of course. In the regular Guqin Sound Valley, he lived an almost secluded life. Unknowingly, a whole year quietly slipped away from him. Phew! A year was not long, and there were almost no changes in the Guqin Sound Valley. The purple bamboo forest was still full of vitality, and the originally newly built bamboo buildings had a trace of wind and frost. A gentle breeze gently blew, bringing a trace of coolness. Now it was the autumn season. Many plants began to wither. In the bamboo building, Di Shirtian let out a long breath of turbid air, opened his eyes, stood up, came to the window, and looked outside. His eyes were still deep and incomprehensible. The immortal cultivators have a saying that makes sense. Time really flies. Think about it, in the blink of an eye, I have been away from the southern barbarian for a year and a half. I wonder how the Myriad Demon Valley is now, and what about Little White? Di Shirtian's words contained an inexplicable color. Although he was in the human world, he always remembered his identity and his roots were always in the southern barbarian. It's almost time to go back. A thought emerged in his mind. In the past year, with the help of Katomi's music, the sorrow pulse in his body had been preliminarily integrated with his mind in just half a year. He had tried it. Now, even if he took out the Luchi zither, the influence of the sorrow pulse on his body would not erode his mind. It could be said that his mind had begun to adapt to the mood of the sorrow pulse. Since then, he had never slacked off in his cultivation. The demonic spirit in the demon refining cauldron had risen to 2/3 of its original level. Compared with a year ago, his strength had more than doubled. Di Shirtian was confident that even if he faced Wan Tao again, he could compete with him. At least, he would not be as embarrassed as before. He had basically learned all the skills he wanted to learn, and he had mastered most of the songs. There was not much point in staying in the valley. Naturally, he had the intention to leave. He looked up at the slowly rising sun in the east. Strands of golden light sprinkled on the earth, making it look vigorous. Purple chi came from the east. All of them showed exuberant vitality. The rising sun is full of vitality. But where is the vitality of the demon clan? Di Shirtian's pupils contracted, and a firm look burst out. He could not help but clench his fists, and his body was overflowing with an unyielding belief and endless fighting spirit. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 191. During this year, in the Zither Melody Valley, other than Qinshin, the only person he came into contact with was Lin Dai, that little girl. Between him and Qinshin, Di Shirtian naturally wouldn't be unable to detect the increasingly strong feelings in her eyes. However, he could only pretend that he didn't know anything. Usually, he would only learn the zither in the early morning and return to his room after he finished learning, not daring to stay with her for long. Every few days, Lin Dai would come over and talk to him. From her, he learned a lot about the world of immortal cultivators, as well as some recent developments. Therefore, although he rarely went out of the valley, he knew that in the world of immortal cultivators, many forces were preparing for the opening of the heavenly demon's secret realm, which was getting closer and closer. According to her, it seemed that even the Qin family had begun to prepare to enter the secret realm. Big Brother D, it's time to start learning the Guqin. Just as he was daydreaming, Katomi's familiar voice came into the room as usual. Di Shirtian's body shook as he glanced at the things in the room. The furnishings in the room were very ordinary, and there was not much difference. Every place was neat and tidy. Although it was simple and crude, it could be said to be warm. It's time to leave. If it's time to cut it off, then so be it. The Myriad Demon Valley is my route. Sakura took a deep breath and took out a storage pouch. With a quick wave of his hand, all the daily utensils in the house were sucked into this empty storage pouch. After a few breaths, all the items were put into the pouch. Out! With a thought, D. Chertion took out another empty storage bag. He had a lot of storage bags like this on him and was not scarce at all. He could take out hundreds of them at will. With this soft shout, the purple king mark on his forehead constantly shot out rays of purple light. At the same time, above the purple pool in the king mark, a green guqin emitted bursts of green light. Above the guqin, a purple passage appeared out of thin air. A strong suction force swallowed the guqin in one fell swoop. Ding dong! The zither followed the purple light and rushed out of the royal rune in the blink of an eye. It was the Luqin. She seemed to be very excited after coming out. Her strings vibrated and a boundless aura of life suddenly erupted. However, D. Chertion's movements were extremely quick. Just as it was about to erupt, he quickly waved the storage bag in his hand and sucked the zither into it. The aura that was about to erupt suddenly disappeared. However, even so, the aura that Luqin exuded at that moment still made many people in the Guqin Valley stand up at the same time. They all looked in the direction of D. Chertion. Katomi, who was standing in the pavilion in front of the bamboo house, had the deepest feeling. The aura that came from that instant caused her body to violently tremble. She looked at the bamboo house with an incomparably astonished expression. Why is this aura coming from Big Brother D's room? I heard the sound of a guqin. Could this aura be coming from some guqin? But why do I feel that this aura is very familiar? It gives me an inexplicable sense of familiarity. What's going on? Katomi's eyes were filled with surprise and confusion. She was secretly bewildered. Regardless of whether she confirmed it or not, what was the source of the aura inside? However, that familiarity made her feel as if she should know. It was as if it was something intimate that she had lost. Creak! Just as she was feeling puzzled, the crisp sound of a door being pushed open rang out. D. Chertion, who was covered in a black robe, walked out of the house. When he saw Katomi, he lifted his feet and walked over. For some reason, when Katomi saw D. Chertion for the first time, she had an inexplicable feeling that something big was going to happen. Her emotions could not help but become even more chaotic. Big Brother D, you are. Katomi was, after all, a meticulous person. A wisp of affection in her heart was secretly tied to D. Chertion. She could clearly feel the change in his aura. With a sweep of her eyes, she found that in his hands, he did not carry the guqin that he usually held in his hands every time he practiced the guqin. This made the trace of uneasiness in her heart become even more intense. D. Chertion looked at the girl in front of him, who had been with him for more than a year. The expression in his eyes was a little complicated. He walked to Katomi with an indifferent expression. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth and said, "I'm leaving." "Leaving? Where are you going?" This sentence was like a bolt of lightning that struck heavily on her heart. Her face, which was covered by the veil, instantly became pale. The guqin in her hands that she was holding fell onto the table with a thud. Her expression became a little panicked. She was actually a little distracted by D. Chertion's words. The Guqin Valley is not a place where I should stay for long. I only came to the valley to learn the guqin. Now that I have mastered it, there is no reason for me to continue staying here. D. Chertion shifted his gaze away. He could not bear to look at Katomi's suddenly sorrowful expression. He hardened his heart and said, "Besides, I still have a group of subordinates waiting for me back at home. No matter how long I stay outside, I will still have to go back. Katomi, thank you for teaching me the guqin with all your heart over the past year. You even played the heart-cleansing Bodhi song for me alone every day. Before I leave, I have nothing to repay you with." D. Chertion took out the storage bag and said, "There is something in here that belongs to you. Take it as a parting gift." After he finished speaking, he extended the storage bag in his hand in front of Katomi. "Big Brother D, you." Katomi looked at Shirtian's face that she had seen countless times. Her heart ached faintly. That confession back then did not make the feelings in her heart disappear. Instead, as time passed, they became even more profound. Perhaps even she herself did not realize it. Now that she heard that Shirtian was leaving, she could not help but feel an impulse. She couldn't help but feel an urge to make him stay. However, at the same time, she was reminded of her family's responsibilities. She wanted to make him stay, but when the words reached her mouth, they became hollow. She said bitterly, "Can you stay?" Her eyes revealed a look of anticipation. After saying that, a bitter smile appeared on her face. Katomi knew that she had no reason to make him stay. Say that she liked him? Did she still have the right to choose love? All good things must come to an end. Today's parting means that we will meet again in the future. I have been in the Guqin Valley for more than a year. I can no longer delay. Don't worry, I will always remember you in my heart. Shirtian forced himself to harden his heart and said indifferently. How could he not understand Katomi's thoughts? It was just that he had no reason to accept it. There was a gap between the monster clan and the human clan. Of course, race might not be a problem, but Shirtian knew very well that although he had a good impression of Katomi, it did not rise to the level of love. What's more, he could not abandon his subordinates and Little White, who were waiting for his return in the southern barbarian for a woman. You really can't stay? Katomi asked again. We will meet again next time, Shirtian said in a deep voice. The meaning in his words was very clear. Well, I will accept your gift. Katomi took a deep breath. The sadness in her eyes was still, but she reached into her arms and took out a snow-white storage bag. When she took the storage bag from Shirtian, she also put it in Shirtian's hand and said, Since you want to leave, here is some of my understanding of the zither. I hope it can be of help to you. Katomi was, after all, a child of an aristocratic family. When she saw that Shirtian had already made up his mind to leave and that it was impossible to change it, she knew that there would be no result even if she stopped him. There was no reason to force him to stay, so she gradually collected her feelings and gave a storage bag that seemed to have been prepared long ago to Shirtian. Gently holding it, she felt the warmth of its owner in the storage bag. After thinking about it, she did not refuse and nodded. We will definitely have a chance to meet again in the future. Shirtian left very decisively. After saying goodbye, he turned around and quickly left the Zither Valley through the entrance of the valley. Katomi stared at his departing figure in a daze. She held the ordinary storage bag tightly in her hands. Unknowingly, her eyes had already become watery. Drops of crystal-clear tears rolled down her cheeks. Haha, as expected, Shirtian is still in the Zither Valley. It's been a year. It's been more than a year. You definitely did not expect that I would actually wait here bitterly for more than a year. If I don't properly settle this debt with you, I will never be able to get rid of the resentment in my heart. When Shirtian left, he did not notice at all that not far from the entrance of the valley, a pitch-black figure was hiding in a hidden corner. Two cold eyes stared at him coldly, revealing traces of dense hatred. The anger in them was like the raging waves of the sea. It was difficult to calm down. I've thought about it for a few months. I don't believe that a mere foundation establishment cultivator like you could have so many puppets. Even the elite disciples of the puppet sect wouldn't be able to have this kind of treatment. It's fake, it must be fake. This time, I will definitely get rid of the resentment in my heart. This person was none other than Wan Tao, who had fought a battle with Shirtian. In the end, he was defeated by the large number of fighting spirits released by Shirtian. At that time, when he returned, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. He felt that there was more than a few thousand puppets, and they were all foundation establishment cultivators. Which wastrel would have such a large amount of money? Because the fighting spirits were too real, his heart wavered and he could not be sure. After thinking for a long time, he finally felt that it was an illusion, and that it was fake. When he thought about it, his anger soared to the sky. This resentment was naturally directed at de Chertion. He had not left the valley and waited outside for more than a year. Until today, when he saw de Chertion walk out of the valley, the resentment that had been brewing for a year could be said to have completely rushed to his head. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidien.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 192. Wan Tao's cold eyes were like a venomous snake hidden in the darkness. Even though he kept telling himself that those puppets were fake, he had no intention of fighting de Chertion right in front of the harp music valley. After all, de Chertion's strength was so strong that he could even hold his own against a core formation cultivator for a period of time without being defeated. It could be said that he had the strength to challenge someone of a higher realm. Even though Wan Tao's cultivation level was above Wan Tao's, he didn't plan on casually making a move. At the very least, he wanted to stay a certain distance away from the harp music valley to avoid alerting the Qin family if they fought. Wan Tao's heart was filled with dread towards the Qin family. He was willing to endure for a while longer. After de Chertion left the harp music valley, he glanced at the storage pouch in his hand that still had a faint fragrance. He scanned it with his demon awareness and couldn't help but reveal a trace of shock. "How am I supposed to face you in the future?" Secretly smiling bitterly, he shook his head and took a deep breath. His heart was racing. Inside the storage pouch there was a brand new book. On the cover of the book was a line of delicate words, "Heart-cleansing Bodhi Song." Katomi actually copied the heart-cleansing Bodhi Song from the Qin family. Looking at the handwriting, it was obvious that it was written not long ago. This kind of ancient book was definitely not allowed to be leaked in the noble families. However, Katomi actually copied it for him without knowing the rules. This kind of action was undoubtedly harming the Qin family's interests. She said that she wouldn't teach him, but she gave him such a precious ancient book before he left. The affection contained within made de Chertion's heart feel bitter. He smiled bitterly to himself. He really didn't know how to repay this kindness in the future. Laughing bitterly, he collected his thoughts and didn't think too much about it. He carefully placed the bag of holding on his body and quickly flew off into the distance. After moving 3 to 4 miles away, Sakra's figure suddenly stopped in the midst of his rapid movement. His body shook, and with a clang-clang-clang sound, numerous pitch-black crescent-shaped blades quickly condensed and formed outside his body. This process was rather quick, to the point that it was almost formed in the blink of an eye. After it was formed, 20 demonic mist blades burst forth with a bitter cold light, following a mysterious trajectory between heaven and earth, and slashed towards a huge ancient tree behind him like lightning. Boom, boom, boom! The demonic mist blade was as thin as a cicada's wing and abnormally sharp. Its strength was comparable to a flying sword. Although the ancient trees had grown for many years, how could they withstand their attacks? A good ancient tree was instantly sliced into pieces, tilting and falling. However, the target of the demonic mist blades wasn't the ancient tree at all. After passing through the tree, their speed didn't decrease in the slightest as they blasted towards the back of the tree. A series of explosions rang out one after another. Terrifying waves of qi tore the broken ancient tree into pieces. Without the obstruction of the ancient tree, a figure appeared clearly in front of him. "It's you!" When de Chertion saw that figure, his pupils suddenly shrank, and his voice was incomparably cold. There was a faint trace of vigilance in his voice. Back then you used a bunch of bullshit puppets to trick this seed into leaving. In order to wash away that humiliation, I waited outside the Zither Melody Valley for more than a year. Time pays off for those who wait. Today you've finally come out. This time I'll settle the score with you. Junior Marshal Brother Shue Ini died at your hands. In addition to what happened last time, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. The person in front of him was none other than Wan Tao, who had been following behind him. Wan Tao's words were filled with resentment, but he wasn't as anxious as he appeared on the surface. Instead, he was secretly paying more attention to this matter. Back then, outside the imperial capital, Di Shirtian had relied on a kind of unseen vigilance to detect him. This time, he was even more direct. He made the first move, instantly forcing Wan Tao to reveal himself. He didn't expect that in just 1 year, Sakura, this brat, had actually improved to such an extent. With such speed, he was simply a genius in the immortal cultivation world. He absolutely couldn't be left alive, otherwise, in a few years, he would definitely become a scourge. Feeling that Di Shirtian's aura was far more powerful than before, the killing intent in Wan Tao's eyes was almost completely revealed. In this world, the strong preyed on the weak, and this was even more so for cultivators. Generally, if cultivators were to become enemies, the best way to deal with them was to kill them as quickly as possible. This was because if they couldn't kill them in one go, they would hide in the mountains and forests for dozens or hundreds of years. Once they came out, they might become a powerhouse. At that time, the one who would die was not someone else, but themselves. Di Shirtian's speed of improvement made Wan Tao feel a deep sense of fear. He didn't even think and didn't want to say anything. He took out a long blood-colored banner and waved it quickly. Blood clouds immediately surged out violently and rushed into the air. They completely covered the area within a 1-mile radius. Vaguely, this area seemed to be isolated from the rest of the world. Unexpectedly, he first set up a restriction around this area to prevent escape. Then, a pair of blood-colored hooks flew out of his hands. The hooks trembled violently, and the blood-colored light on them was like flowing water, flashing quickly. In the blink of an eye, they turned into 2 blood-colored centipedes, 1 male and 1 female. They were at least 1 zhang long, and their bodies emitted waves of ferocious hostility. Their aura was not inferior to that of a demonic beast. In the world of cultivators, there was a method to increase the power of magic treasures. That was to extract the demonic soul from the bodies of the demonic beasts that were killed, and then fuse it with the magic treasure. In this way, the magic treasure's spirituality would increase greatly, and its power would become extremely strong. It could also summon the demonic soul that was fused with the magic treasure. The demonic soul's consciousness would be wiped out, leaving only the instinct for fighting. It was a very powerful method. When summoned and used together with the magic treasure, it could display several times the usual combat power. This kind of magic treasure was called a psychic magic treasure. It had more potential than ordinary magic treasures. However, when the demonic soul fused with the magic treasure, the success rate was not high. Every time the fusion failed, not only would the demonic soul be directly destroyed, but the magic treasure's power would also drop by a level. Even if 100 fusion attempts were made, there might not be a single success. The matter of the psychic magic treasure could be said to be the biggest secret in Wan Tao's heart. Apart from himself, no one else knew about it, and he had never revealed it in front of anyone. This time, for Sakura, he actually took out this assassin that could be said to be his trump card without hesitation. It could be seen how strong his killing intent towards Sakura was. Hiss! Hiss! The 2 blood-colored centipedes, which only had their instincts left, were condensed. At the same time, they let out a terrifying roar to the sky. The roar carried a strong smell of blood. Each of the centipedes had hundreds of segments, and the edge of the carapace was as sharp as a blade. Countless legs danced wildly in the air, staring at Di Shirtian, revealing a ruthless killing intent. With a roar, they fiercely pounced on Di Shirtian. Wan Tao, you deserve to die. When Di Shirtian saw the 2 large centipedes, his eyes revealed a cold killing intent. With his eyesight, How could he not see that these two large centipedes were definitely demonic beasts when they were alive? Unexpectedly, they were killed. From the looks of it, whether it was their demonic cores, corpses, or even their demonic souls were not spared. Seeing the demonic beasts being treated like this, an instinctive anger surged. His body shook, and another 20 demonic mist blades instantly condensed. Without a trace of stopping, they all chopped down on the two blood-colored centipedes. The sharpness of the demonic mist blades had always been Shirtian's killing move. However, when they landed on the blood-colored centipedes, bursts of blood-colored light flowed like flowing water, and the sharp saber chi on the blades were all deflected. The segments of the carapace moved, and the blades were crushed. His murderous aura towards Shirtian did not decrease in the slightest. Shirtian's expression was calm and incomparably cold. With a thought, the seven sins demonic zither, which had been constantly absorbing the power of desire between heaven and earth in the demonic residence, turned into a demonic jade light, and appeared in his left arm. His right hand fell on the strings, and his 5 fingers pulled out afterimages, quickly plucking the strings. He did not have the elegance of a zither master, but exuded a domineering aura. Plucking the strings was like waving a saber. Ding-dong! Ding-dong! The strings were plucked one by one. If one looked closely, one would see that although the current plucking of the strings was as domineering as before, the demonic chi in Shirtian's body poured into the strings through his 5 fingers. There was a faint trace of skill. The power of the 7 sins demonic zither was actually drawn out by this domineering skill. In the past, Shirtian was just a rude zither, and could not draw out the power of the 7 sins demonic zither itself. It was good enough that he could exert 50% of its power. Now, with the help of skill, the true power of the 7 sins demonic zither began to be exerted. Not to mention the close combat between Shirtian and Wan Tao, the battle became white-hot from the beginning. However, Katomi had been standing in the valley, watching Shirtian's figure gradually disappear from her sight. A drop of sparkling tear fell to the ground like a pearl, and shattered into countless pieces. Sigh. A sigh sounded in Katomi's ears. Madame Chin had come to the pavilion unknowingly. Looking at the sorrowful aura on Katomi's body, she sighed. Silly child, although Shirtian is good, and can be said to be one of the best among the younger generation, he is not a disciple of the Chin family after all. He is too mysterious. Your father investigated for a full year, and still could not find anything about him. You are destined to be sad for the rest of your life if you fall in love with him. Listen to your mother and forget about him. Katomi retracted her gaze and looked at Madame Chin. She revealed a poignant smile and said, "Mother, you don't need to persuade me. As a member of the Chin family, Katomi understands her responsibilities. Perhaps this is just a beautiful memory in my daughter's heart." Sigh, it's been hard on you. Madame Chin sighed and said, "You should see what kind of gift your big brother left for you before he left. Perhaps he never cared about you at all." A parting gift could also, to a certain extent, show the importance of one person to another. Please give me a few recommendation tickets. I hope that no matter where you read it, please come back to Chidian and give me a few recommendation tickets after you read it. Chapter 193. Katomi smiled faintly and lowered her head to look at the storage bag in her hand. The storage bag was the most ordinary kind. The space inside was not big, about the size of a small house. It could not hold too many things. It was an ordinary storage tool that almost anyone with some ability in the cultivation world would have. It could not be considered precious at all. However, in her eyes, it was as if she was holding the most precious treasure in the world. Her eyes revealed a gentle light. No matter what it is, this is the first and last time he gave me something. Whether it is precious or not is not important. Katomi said softly. In this bag, even if it was the most inconspicuous weed, it was the most precious thing in her eyes. Because, in her heart, it represented the feelings that she could not say. She gently opened the storage bag. Whoosh! A bright green light surged out of the bag like a tide. This ordinary storage bag was pushed by a strong force on the spot, and the space in the bag instantly collapsed and shattered. The green light covered the sky and spread out in all directions. All the flowers and trees that were covered by the green light started to grow crazily at the same time. Ding dong! Ding dong! In the green light, a green guqin vibrated with incomparable excitement. The strings did not need to be plucked at all, and began to jump, making crisp sounds. It was incomparably cheerful. Waves of simple aura were emitted from the guqin. The vast aura almost instantly enveloped the entire Guqin Valley. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the short span of a few breaths after Lu Qin's appearance, one figure after another continuously rushed out from the valley. Some were using light, some were directly flying in the air, and some were even directly appearing out of thin air. In the blink of an eye, in this originally unremarkable pavilion in the purple bamboo forest, there were actually more than 10 figures that had inconceivably appeared. Among them, Qin Xian was among them. Seeing a few of them, even Madame Qin's expression changed slightly, and a slightly respectful look appeared on her face. Lu Qin, haha, it's the Lu Qin. Our Qin family's treasure, the Lu Qin, has finally been born. The teachings left behind by the old ancestor were not wrong. The green jade zither really came into being in this generation. Who is it? Who is it that has the ability to bring it out from the zither realm? Haha, this is the ancestor's personal treasure. In the end, our Qin family is blessed with great fortune. Our countless efforts for the sake of the world have not been in vain. The heavens will not watch as our Qin family is exterminated. Good, good, good. Our Qin family finally has hope of surviving this crisis. Most of the people who suddenly appeared were old men. They looked at the mysterious green light of the ancient zither and the mysterious green leaves on the ancient zither. They were like children dancing with their hands and feet. Their faces were full of excitement. They looked at the ancient zither as if they were looking at an attractive beauty. Qin Xian looked up at the sky and smiled. The heavens did not disappoint my Qin family. Lu Qin, oh Lu Qin. Haha. He laughed heartily. Lu Qin, this is the legendary Lu Qin. Katomi stared blankly at the ancient zither in front of her, her eyes filled with disbelief. Everyone in the Qin family knew what the Lu Qin meant. It was the Qin family's most precious treasure. Legend has it that it was refined from a branch of the world tree. It had supreme power. Even Qin had been guessing what kind of items Sakura would leave in the storage bag, but no one would have guessed that what was left inside was actually a treasure that no one would have thought of. While she was in disbelief, a kind of ecstasy involuntarily emerged in her heart. She thought to herself, the verdant zither was given to me by Big Brother D. Doesn't that mean that Big Brother D found it in the zither domain back then? Whoever finds the verdant zither will be my husband. Waves of joy appeared in her mind, and her heart surged like waves. The one who found LV Qin was Sakura, which meant that everything that she had scruples about in the past, the obstacles that she had erected between the two of them, would no longer exist. She could no longer love someone without any misgivings. Xnr, who took out the Lu Qin? Could it be Di Shirtian? Qin Xian's face was filled with joy. However, when he thought of the origin of the Lu Qin, he found it strange. Back then, when it was in the spiritual altar, the altar couldn't detect that someone had brought it out. This was the most unbelievable thing. Father, Big Brother D gave it to me before he left. Katomi nodded happily. Looking at the Lu Qin, it was exceptionally bright. She felt an incomparably intimate aura from the Lu Qin. She couldn't help but reach out and hug it. No, the Lu Qin is a treasure, but without its approval, no one can touch it. Otherwise, they will suffer a backlash. Seeing Qin Xian's action, Qin Xian's expression abruptly changed. He shouted loudly and hurriedly tried to pull her away. However, halfway through, his hand stopped with a strange expression on his face. Katomi held the Lu Chi Qin with one hand. The moment the Lu Chi Qin landed in her hand, all the green light was withdrawn into the Lu Chi Qin. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared completely. She blinked and affectionately stroked the Lu Chi Qin. Xian, how did you touch the Lu Chi Qin? Qin Xian looked at her in surprise. I don't know. I just felt a very intimate aura from the Lu Chi Qin Xian, so I carried it over. It doesn't seem to be dangerous. On the contrary, it has a very comfortable aura. Katomi shook her head. She only did it out of instinct. She didn't know the danger at all. Good. Xiao Xuanzi, you have a good daughter. She can actually get the approval of the Lu Chi Qin. Her future achievements are limitless. TSK, little girl, come to the Heavenly Sound Cave in a few days. We old fellows will personally guide you in your cultivation. An old man dressed casually smiled as he looked at Qin. His eyes were full of fondness. Xiao Xuanzi? Qin Xian's mouth couldn't help but twitch a few times. Thank you, second grandpa. Katomi was overjoyed when she heard this. She quickly thanked him. However, she immediately said to Qin Xian, Father, the Lu Chi Qin was brought out by Big Brother D. According to the oath I made, Big Brother D is my husband. I want to go and find Big Brother D. Although she was very happy to find the Lu Chi Qin, what she was most happy about was that from now on, she could be together with Di Shirtian. She no longer had to worry about the obstruction of her family. That's right. When Qin Xian heard this, his expression became somewhat solemn. He said, however, Di Shirtian is not simple. He actually has the means to hide the Lu Chi Qin. He is really too mysterious. If I don't investigate his identity, I will never be at ease. Bang! At this moment, a series of intense roars erupted in the distance outside the valley. The sound was so loud that even the valley could hear it clearly. The old men casually glanced at it, but they didn't seem to be interested at all. One by one, they strangely left like when they came, leaving only Qin Xian's family in the same place. I don't care. I made an oath a long time ago. Whoever can find the Lu Chi Qin will be my husband. It doesn't matter if he is a human or a ghost. I, Katomi, will never marry anyone except him in this life. I'm going to find him. Katomi heard the roars in the distance. She could vaguely see blood-red clouds in the sky. There was a faint feeling in his heart that this might be because Sakura was encountering some danger. Qing. She called out to something in the air. Roar. As soon as her voice fell, a crisp and pleasant cry that seemed to carry the aura of a king quickly rang out. In the distance, a green figure quickly arrived in the air above the pavilion. Upon closer inspection, it was actually a large green bird in the air. This bird appeared to be abnormally noble. There were 3 green feathers behind its tail. It was an ancient sacred beast, the green luan. Legend has it that the green luan had long been extinct in the purple gold continent. It was destroyed in the ancient times. She didn't expect to see one here. However, it seemed that this green luan hadn't reached the level of a sacred beast. It was still a young sacred beast. However, the green luan was the green luan. Even though it was young, it still had the noble aura of a king among birds. When Katomi saw the green luan, her eyes revealed a friendly expression. She leaped into the air and landed on the green luan's back. She patted its head and said, Qing, hurry up. Let's go to the place where the sound came from. The green luan seemed to be able to understand human language. It immediately flew up and let out a loud cry. With a light flap of its wings, it quickly rushed towards the place covered by the blood-red clouds. Waves of pressure emitted from its body. With this movement, it could be seen that although it was only a young green luan, It already had a powerful aura that wasn't inferior to a core formation cultivator. Its speed was extremely fast, leaving behind afterimages in the air. Too reckless. When Qin Xian saw this, he shook his head. His body flashed and he also rushed out of the valley. With this movement, it could be seen that the Qin clan head was actually flying in the air. He was directly using his physical body to fly. This kind of cultivation was definitely not something a core formation cultivator could do. At this time, the battle between Di Shitian and Wan Tao could be said to have reached its climax. After learning the zither, Di Shitian had already figured out how to use the true power of the life artifact, the Seven Sins demonic zither. His 5 fingers quickly plucked the strings of the zither. Layers of demonic white light appeared on the body of the zither. The power of desire that had been absorbed surged onto the zither. In addition, Di Shitian's own demonic chi was added to the zither. Beams of jade-colored sound blades flashed with strange light. Compared to before, these sound blades were like heaven and earth. They contained the power of sound waves, which made the sound blades vibrate unceasingly. Wherever they passed, sonic booms resounded in the air. The power of desire was also contained in the sound blades. When the sound blades vibrated unceasingly, the power of desire they emitted could directly arouse the desire in people's minds. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.